My girlfriend of 3 years texted me asking for a break, then immediately followed up by confessing she was pregnant with another man's child. Instead of arguing, I simply congratulated her, blocked her on everything, and sent the screenshots directly to her fiercely strict, retired military father. The absolute legendary chaos that followed destroyed her web of lies, got the police involved, and left her to face the brutal reality of her own actions. I, a 31-year-old male, got the text at exactly 4:17 p.m. on a dreary Thursday afternoon. My girlfriend, who we will call Chloe, 28F, and I had been together for 3 solid years. We lived separately in different parts of Seattle but spent the vast majority of our nights together at my apartment. We had been talking about moving in together next year, looking at rings, discussing our future. It was entirely normal, long-term relationship stuff. The first text came through while I was sitting at my desk at the logistics firm where I work. "Hey, we need to talk. I think I need a break to figure some things out. It's not you, I just need space to get my head straight." I was staring at my computer screen, the bright blue light suddenly burning my eyes. My stomach immediately dropped into my shoes, but if I am being completely honest with myself, a small part of me wasn't entirely shocked. Chloe had been growing incredibly distant for the last 2 months. She was constantly guarding her phone, leaving it face down on the kitchen counter, and changing her passcode. There were suddenly a lot of girls' nights and emergency marketing campaigns that kept her out late. These were the classic, textbook signs of infidelity, but I loved her, so I had stubbornly given her the benefit of the doubt. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the office air conditioning. I could have panicked. I could have begged. Instead, I just typed back, "Okay, take the time you need. Sent." Done. 2D. If she needed space, I was going to give her a galaxy of it. I wasn't going to lower myself to begging for someone's affection. Then, exactly 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Chloe. "Also, I'm pregnant. But it's not yours. I've been seeing someone else. I'm really sorry. But I thought you should know." I read those 2 sentences at least 3 times. I just sat there at my desk, my hand frozen over my computer mouse, completely paralyzed. A coworker walking by asked if I was okay because all the color had drained from my face. I just nodded and quietly said, "Yeah. Just need a minute." Pregnant. Not mine. Seeing someone else. The strangest thing happened in that moment. I didn't explode. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't scream. I didn't break down crying. I just felt freezing cold. It was like someone reached into the back of my brain and flipped a heavy switch, completely shutting off all my emotions. Pure survival mode activated. Without a second thought, I took a screenshot of the text thread. I made sure both messages and the clear timestamps were perfectly visible. I typed back a single, final message. "Congratulations on your new journey. I wish you the best." As soon as it said, "Delivered," I immediately blocked her number. Then I opened Instagram and blocked her. Facebook. Blocked. Snapchat, LinkedIn, everything. In less than 30 seconds, I erased her digital existence from my life entirely. But here is the crucial piece of context about my now ex-girlfriend. Chloe comes from an intensely traditional, strict Catholic family. Her father, Arthur, is a retired Marine who goes to Mass every single Sunday, says grace before every meal, and constantly preaches about family values, honor, and respect. He is huge on the concept of purity and no sex before marriage. Chloe had spent our entire 3-year relationship absolutely terrified of Arthur finding out that we even slept in the same bed together. And now, here she was. Pregnant out of wedlock, carrying some random guy's child, all while actively deceiving the man her father thought she was going to marry. I opened a blank text message and typed in Arthur's number. We had met plenty of times over the years. Arthur was a decent, imposing guy who respected me because I had a stable career, kept my apartment clean, and treated his daughter like a queen. He had invited me to their family cookouts, asked about my long-term financial plans, and made it very clear he viewed me as his future son-in-law. I attached the screenshot of Chloe's confession to the message and typed, "Sir, I thought you should see this. I'm incredibly sorry it had to come from me. Take care of yourself." So, I turned my phone on silent, calmly packed up my briefcase, finished my workday, and drove home to an empty apartment. Update 1. 24 hours later, I severely underestimated the absolute nuclear blast I had just triggered. I kept my phone strictly on silent all night Thursday. I ordered a massive pizza, watched an action movie, and slept surprisingly well, likely due to sheer emotional exhaustion. When I woke up on Friday morning and finally checked my screen, my phone was practically vibrating itself off the nightstand. I had 83 unread text messages, 23 missed calls, and 14 voicemails. Chloe had apparently lost her mind trying to reach me. She had called from her best friend's phone, her mother's phone, and several random numbers I didn't even recognize. The text messages were a wild, descending spiral of panic. From her friend's phone, "Answer your phone right now. This is serious." From her mom's phone, Young man, we need to discuss this situation maturely. From a random number. You are a piece of garbage for telling my dad. You ruined my life. How could you do this to me? The voicemails were even more unhinged. I sat on the edge of my bed, drinking my morning coffee, listening to her voice shift from desperate apologies to outright threats. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. Quickly devolved into, you had absolutely no right to involve my family. You vindictive psycho. But the most important messages were the 3 voicemails from her father, Arthur. Each one was significantly calmer than you would ever expect a retired Marine to be upon learning his daughter was carrying an affair baby. The first voicemail came in at 8:14 p.m., Thursday night. Son, it's Arthur. I just got your message. I need to confirm some things on my end. Call me when you can. I'm hoping to God this is a bad joke. The second voicemail, 9:45 p.m. Spoke with my daughter. She confirmed it's true. All of it. I am calling to say I appreciate you being honest with me as a man. This isn't your burden to carry anymore. I am deeply sorry. The third voicemail, 11:30 p.m. Don't worry about any of this fallout. You did the exact right thing by telling me. Focus on yourself. You're a good man. That last message hit me incredibly hard. It sounded like Arthur was completely broken and disappointed in his daughter, but he maintained enough honor to respect me for not covering up her deceit. It was a very weird, heavy feeling. By Friday afternoon, the full scope of the chaos became clear. Chloe had apparently gone into full panic mode after Arthur confronted her with a screenshot on Thursday night. Her mother, Eleanor, had immediately demanded the name of the guy she had been sleeping with. It turned out to be a guy named Marcus, a 25-year-old junior marketing coordinator from her office. Eleanor actually found his number and called him directly. Marcus essentially told her mom, "Yeah. I mean, maybe it's mine. We hooked up a few times after work, but I'm not ready to be a dad, so leave me alone." Classic cowardice. The guy wanted all the fun of sleeping with a taken woman but absolutely none of the adult consequences. So now Chloe was pregnant. Entirely single, and her intensely religious parents knew every dirty detail of her double life. Eleanor left me a very stiff voicemail later that day. We are deeply disappointed in this situation. We understand you were betrayed, but our daughter made her choices. We won't be bothering you again. It was professional, freezing cold, and exactly what you would expect from a proud family trying to sweep a catastrophic embarrassment under the rug. But Chloe wasn't finished. Friday night, I received a huge paragraph from yet another friend's phone. You didn't have to tell my dad. You completely destroyed my relationship with my family. They won't even look at me. My dad actually cried. He cried because of what you did. I hope you're happy. I wasn't happy, but I certainly wasn't sad either. I was just entirely done with her manipulation. I replied one single time, you destroyed your relationship with your family by cheating for months and getting pregnant. You destroyed our relationship the exact same way. I just delivered the truth. Lose this number and block that one, too. Update 2. 1 week later, the sheer entitlement and delusion escalated exactly like you would expect from a narcissist backed into a corner. On Sunday, 5 days after the initial breakup text, Chloe's younger sister, Elena, reached out to me. Elena and I had always gotten along great. She was 24, much more liberal than the rest of the family, and always seemed like the only reasonable person in that household. Her message was cautious. Hey, can we please talk? I'm not trying to start any drama, I just really want to understand your side of what happened. I figured I had nothing to hide, so I called her. She listened in total silence while I calmly explained everything. The distant behavior, the sudden break text, the pregnancy confession 3 minutes later, and my quiet decision to send the screenshot to Arthur. Elena was dead quiet for a long minute after I finished. Then she sighed heavily. Okay. That is exactly what I thought. Chloe has been telling everyone that you hacked her phone, forced her to tell you she was pregnant, and threatened to ruin her life if she didn't confess. I actually laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. I have the screenshots, Elena. She volunteered that information completely unprompted via text. Can you please send them to me? She asked. I immediately texted her the screenshots. Both texts, crystal clear, with the timestamp showing she sent the pregnancy confession exactly 3 minutes after the "we need a break" text. There were 0 messages from me in between. Elena's response was immediate. Wow. She is really lying to everyone's face. My parents genuinely think you manipulated her into confessing and were emotionally abusing her. That is when I realized Chloe was running a full-blown PR campaign to save her own skin. She couldn't accept the responsibility of being the villain, so she was actively rewriting history, trying to make herself the tragic victim of my supposed manipulation. Elena promised to show Arthur and Eleanor the real screenshots that night. I told her to do whatever she wanted. I was done playing games. Then, Tuesday night rolled around, and things got incredibly nasty. I was sitting in my living room at 9 p.m., watching a documentary, when a violent, aggressive pounding echoed through my apartment. It wasn't a knock, it was a frantic hammering that made the front door rattle. I muted the TV, opened the door. Open the damn door. It was Chloe, screaming at the top of her lungs in the hallway. I didn't move. I just watched the door. My neighbor across the hall, a sweet older woman named Mrs. Higgins, poked her head out and asked if everything was all right. Chloe snapped at her, screaming that I was holding her hostage. Mrs. Higgins, bless her heart, immediately called the cops. 10 minutes later, flashing red and blue lights illuminated my living room window. I finally stood up, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door just as two uniformed police officers stepped off the elevator. Chloe was sitting on the floor in the hallway, hysterically crying. The second she saw the officers, she launched into an Oscar-worthy performance. "He's my boyfriend. We had a fight and he's locking me out of our apartment. He has all my stuff in there." She sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change my expression. I calmly stepped out into the hallway and addressed the officers. "Officers, we broke up last week after she confessed via text that she was pregnant with another man's child. I have the messages right here on my phone. She does not live here. She has never lived here. The lease is solely in my name." I pulled out my phone, opened the Photos app, and handed it to the taller officer. I also pulled up a PDF of my lease agreement. The officer read the texts, looked at the lease, and then looked down at Chloe like she was a toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. "Ma'am, you need to leave the property right now. This is not your legal residence. But I have stuff in there. My expensive things. My iPad." She shrieked. She had maybe a pink toothbrush, a cheap bottle of face wash, and a pair of socks in my bathroom. I had already bagged it all up days ago in a plastic grocery sack. "Wait right here," I told the cops. I stepped inside, grabbed the pathetic plastic bag, and tossed it at her feet in the hallway. "Here is absolutely everything you own." She frantically ripped the bag open. "Where's my iPad? You're keeping it because you're spiteful and abusive." The older female officer was losing her patience fast. "Ma'am, do you have any proof you own an iPad and left it inside this specific apartment?" Of course, she didn't, because she never had an iPad at my place. She was literally making things up on the spot to create drama and get me in trouble. The officers firmly grabbed her by the arms, escorted her off the property, and explicitly warned her that if she ever returned, she would be arrested and charged with criminal trespassing. Before she got into her car, she shouted back at me, "You're going to regret this. My family has expensive lawyers." The taller cop just muttered, "Yeah. Everyone's got lawyers," as they watched her drive away into the night. After they left, I went down to the precinct and filed a formal harassment report anyway. I needed an ironclad paper trail, just in case her delusions escalated further. On Wednesday, her mother, Eleanor, called from a completely different phone number. I answered by accident, thinking it was a work client. "I know you don't want to hear from us, but we need to discuss the situation," Eleanor said, her voice tight with suburban panic. "Ma'am, your daughter confessed to cheating on me and carrying another man's child. What exactly is there to discuss?" I asked coldly. "She is still carrying a baby," Eleanor pleaded. "She needs support right now. Her father and we are trying to navigate this according to our faith. We are not abandoning her, but we are deeply disappointed." "That sounds entirely like a family matter," I replied. "It is between you and your daughter. The young man she was seeing won't return our calls." She sounded desperate. "He is denying the baby might be his." "Still not my problem, Eleanor. She made a mistake. She is scared and she is all alone. She made a choice," I corrected her, my voice turning to ice. "Actually, she made multiple choices. For months. Every time she lied to my face. I am sorry she is scared, but she has to face the consequences of her own actions." A long, heavy pause hung on the line. Then, her voice broke. "You're right. I'm sorry for calling. I raised her so much better than this. I believe you about everything. She is an adult. This is on her." She actually thanked me for being decent and hung up. It felt bizarre. Like a mother's instinct trying to fix a broken situation she knew was entirely her daughter's fault. On Friday evening, exactly 1 week since the initial text message, Arthur called me one last time. "Son. Just a quick call. I wanted you to know that Elena showed us the real text screenshots. Chloe's version of events did not match reality, to say the least. Her mother and I are forcing her to take full responsibility. She is moving back into her childhood bedroom, and she is going to prepare for this baby. The boy from her office finally admitted it could be his, but he is demanding a legal paternity test. Our family is in total chaos right now, but it is her chaos, not yours." "I appreciate you telling me, sir," I said quietly. "You handled this with absolute class," Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. "I truly wish my own daughter had half of your integrity. Take care of yourself, son." And that was it. Ultimate validation from the one person whose opinion somehow still mattered in this entire nightmare. Update 3. 3 weeks later. This will be the final update, because this exhausting saga is finally dying down and I am moving on with my life. Chloe tried a few more pathetic stunts in the following weeks, each one significantly more desperate than the last. During week 2, she created a completely fake Instagram account with no profile picture just to DM me a massive essay. She claimed that she had done the math wrong, that the baby might actually be mine, and that we needed to get back together for the sake of our child. I took a screenshot of the DM, sent it directly to Elena with the caption, "Your sister is now lying about the baby's paternity to trap me. Just for your information." Elena immediately replied, "Oh my god. She is supposed to be seeing a therapist. I will let my mom know right now." I blocked the fake account and went back to my day. During week 3, she actually tried to send me a connection request on LinkedIn. LinkedIn? Who does that? I declined and blocked her corporate profile too. Then, yesterday, the absolute peak of absurdity happened. Marcus, the baby daddy co-worker, actually reached out to me via Facebook Messenger. This absolute genius typed out, "Hey man. Sorry about everything that went down. Chloe told me you guys were basically done and just living like roommates. I didn't know the full situation. Anyway, I'm stepping up for the kid if the DNA test proves it's mine. Just wanted to reach out man to man and clear the air." I stared at this pathetic message for a solid minute. This coward helped blow up my 3-year relationship, got my girlfriend pregnant, aggressively denied it for weeks. And now he wanted to clear the air to make himself feel like a good guy. I replied with one sentence, "Do not ever contact me again." That was it. That was all the energy his existence deserved. I blocked him immediately. From what I have heard through Elena, who still occasionally texts me updates without me even asking, which is a little weird, but whatever, here is where everyone landed in the aftermath of the explosion. Chloe is currently living in her old childhood bedroom at her parents' house. She is working entirely from home because she is far too humiliated to show her face at the office, where literally everyone knows the scandalous details. Arthur barely speaks 2 words to her. Eleanor is deeply disappointed but is trying to be supportive about the pregnancy itself. Since they are strict Catholics, abortion was never on the table, and Chloe adamantly refused to consider adoption. Marcus finally submitted to a legal paternity test. The results came back yesterday. It is 100% his child. Now he is in a total panic because he is 25 years old, lives in a cramped apartment with 2 loud roommates, and makes maybe $45,000 a year. He legally offered to pay child support but made it explicitly clear he has absolutely zero interest in being involved in the child's life beyond a monthly paycheck. Chloe is supposedly devastated because she genuinely thought he would want to play happy family with her. Her entire friend group has mostly abandoned her. Word got around fast about exactly what happened, and apparently, even her closest friends thought it was beyond psychotic to not only cheat for months but to coldly announce a pregnancy to me via a text message while I was at work. One of her former best friends actually told Elena that I was the best guy Chloe had ever dated, and she threw away a perfectly good future for absolute garbage. Her professional situation is also completely ruined. HR got heavily involved because her and Marcus's affair strictly violated their corporate dating policy, as they worked on the same accounts. Marcus got aggressively transferred to a different, less desirable department, and Chloe is currently on extremely thin ice professionally. One more slip up, and she is fired. Meanwhile, I am just out here existing and healing. I went to a professional therapist for a few intense sessions. We talked extensively through the deep betrayal, the lingering anger, and the incredibly weird guilt I felt for sending that screenshot to Arthur, even though I logically knew I did the exact right thing. My therapist helped me process the betrayal trauma and realized none of this was my fault. I started going out with my old friends more often. I picked up hiking again, a hobby I had neglected for years because Chloe hated the outdoors. I spent a weekend completely fixing up my apartment. I threw out the mattress we used to sleep on, bought a brand new one, repainted the living room walls a cool gray, and bought new curtains. I am actually enjoying the peace of being single for the first time in years. My home feels like my sanctuary again. A buddy of mine asked me over a beer if I regretted sending that initial screenshot to her dad. Honestly? No. Not even a tiny fraction of a percent. Chloe made her choices. She lied to my face for months. She climbed into another man's bed. She got pregnant. Then she dropped a nuclear bomb on my life via a text message like I was just supposed to roll over and take it. What was I supposed to do? Be okay with it? Support her? Pretend nothing happened while she lied to her strict family? And then she actively tried to lie about the timeline to her parents, making me out to be an abusive villain. She tried to make it seem like I manipulated her or forced her confession. Nah, the absolute truth needed to come out immediately. Her family deserved to know exactly who their daughter really was behind closed doors. And Chloe deserved to face the full, crushing weight of her own decisions without being able to hide behind a carefully constructed wall of lies. The fallout was not my fault. Every single negative consequence she is experiencing right now came directly from her own selfish actions, not mine. So, some people online might think I was too harsh. They might say I should have just walked away quietly and let her deal with her family on her own terms. But those same people don't understand the mind of a narcissist. She would have lied. She would have painted me as the cruel, heartless monster who abandoned her in her time of need. She would have twisted the narrative to make herself the sympathetic victim. I just made absolutely sure the undeniable truth got out first. Arthur's respect meant something to me. Him thanking me for my honesty and acknowledging that I handled a devastating situation with class validated everything I did. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel, I was just a man who absolutely refused to be played for a fool. One last thing. She sent one final text message from yet another random phone number 2 days ago. I know you hate me. I just want you to know I am so sorry. For everything. You truly deserve better. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. The baby is due in November. It's a girl. I read it. I didn't respond. I blocked the number immediately. I don't hate her. I don't really feel anything about her anymore. She is just a stranger I used to know who made terrible, life-altering choices. Her apology doesn't change the past. The baby being a girl doesn't change the betrayal. It is her life now, her consequences, and her lifelong responsibility. As for forgiveness, maybe someday in the distant future, but certainly not today, and not for a very long time. Right now, I am entirely focused on myself, on moving forward, and on being incredibly grateful that I found out who she really was before I wasted any more years of my life, or God forbid, married her. 3 months from now, she will be giving birth to a child in a broken home. I will be living my peaceful life, probably not thinking about her at all, and honestly, that is the absolute best revenge, just not caring anymore. Moving on feels incredibly good. That is the end of the story. Thank you to everyone who read this massive saga and to everyone in the comments who assured me I did the right thing. I really needed to hear that during those first dark days. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your gut, protect your own peace.
My wife and her family planned Operation Divorce for 6 months to evict me on our 10th anniversary. Instead, I flipped their plan in one night. After 10 years of marriage with Lydia, I believed we had something substantial. We met in college, married young, and created what I thought was a good life together. She works in marketing. I'm a software developer. We have some decent money between us. Her family was constantly active, perhaps too involved, but I assumed it came with marrying into a close-knit bunch. Her sisters, Marissa and Talia, as well as her mother Vivian, are constantly bothering us, but I put up with it because I loved Lydia. What I didn't realize was how much they all disliked me. I helped Lydia set up her new iPhone 3 weeks ago. She had been moaning about how slow her old one was, so she finally updated. While importing her apps and data, I logged into her iCloud to ensure that everything was correctly synced. She was in the shower when her laptop screen filled up with notifications. I believed it was work-related because she was constantly besieged with mails. But then I noticed a WhatsApp notification from Operation Divorce Dan. My name is Daniel. I opened WhatsApp in the browser and discovered a group chat with Lydia, Marissa, Talia and Vivian. The messages made my blood run cold, but I continued reading because I wanted to know what I was dealing with. Marissa wrote, "He is so foolish." Talia replied, "I already called the moving company. We can clear his stuff while he's at work Thursday. Everything goes to storage unit 247 on 5th Street. Mom got the key yesterday." Vivian chimed in, "My lawyer friend has the divorce papers ready. Dan will be served right at the party. He'll be homeless by 6 p.m. Can't wait to see his face." Lydia had sent a laughing emoji and added, "We should film it for TikTok. Watch this loser get what he deserves. 10 years of pretending to love this pathetic man, and I can finally be free." I screenshotted everything. Every message dated back months. They'd been planning this for half a year, and it was perfectly timed for our anniversary, which I believed we were celebrating on Saturday. Lydia's surprise party turned out to be my own eviction and divorce ambush. The mails showed a lot more. They discussed how they had always regarded me as beneath their family. Lydia only married me because she was pregnant her senior year, which I had no idea about because she miscarried early and never discussed the reason for our short engagement. How they had been waiting for the proper time to fully ruin me. Marissa suggested that I was very comfortable and needed to be brought down a few pegs. Talia mentioned how they wanted me to lose everything so that I would understand my station. Vivian started calling me worthless and saying her daughter deserved more than any unknown programmer. They had everything planned out. Lydia planned to appear normal all week and then invite me to what I assumed was our anniversary dinner on Saturday evening. Instead, I'd walk into a room filled with divorce papers and moving boxes, and they'd all be filming my reaction for social media. They intended to thoroughly humiliate me. What they don't realize is that I've been expecting something like this for a while. Not exactly, but I've noticed the coldness, the way people look at me during family gatherings, and the pause and hushed talks when I enter a room. I've been quietly preparing for years to ensure that I was financially and legally secured if Lydia ever tried to leave me with nothing. See, I'm not the stupid nothing coder people believe I am. I've been building fortune through investments and side projects that they have no idea about. I only have assets in my name. They have never considered backup plans and are utterly unaware of links. While they have been planning for 6 months, I have been deliberately placing myself for 4 years. I've spent the last 3 weeks pretending normal and taking screenshots of every new communication they send. They keep adding elements to their plan, getting more enthusiastic for Saturday. Lydia even asked me what time I wanted to depart for our special dinner yesterday, and I couldn't keep a straight face when I realized what she meant. Which storage unit did they rent? I know just where it is. Who is the lawyer that Vivian mentioned? I've already completed my research. What about the moving company Talia hired? They're going to face some unexpected challenges tomorrow. Tonight is Friday. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., I'm meant to stroll into my own surprise party, but I have some surprises of my own that they won't expect. I've been preparing for this moment for longer than they have planned to destroy me. And by Sunday night, all 3 of these women will know precisely what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Update 1. Holy crap, Reddit. Yesterday was completely chaotic, and I'm still processing everything that happened. Thank you to everyone who commented on my initial post. Some of you predicted precisely what was going to happen. Saturday morning began normally enough. Lydia was acting especially kind, possibly thinking she was being clever. She served me breakfast and kept mentioning how eager she was for our special evening. She even brought up particular memories from our wedding, telling me how much she loved me and how excited she was to commemorate our 10th anniversary. The entire time, I'm watching her execute this act, knowing exactly what she expects to happen in a few hours. Every smile was artificial. Every kiss felt like betrayal. And every nice word was only part of her elaborate deceit. It took everything I had not to confront her right there and then. Around 2 p.m., she mentioned that she wanted to run errands to prepare for tonight. She claimed she needed to pick up flowers and visit the restaurant to confirm our reservation. Perfect timing. As soon as she went, I made my first move. Here's what I didn't say in the original post. Which storage unit did they rent? It's under my name. Talia utilized my credit card information from the time I helped her move last year. She still had my information preserved and assumed I'd never notice a storage rental charge, but I watch every transaction on every account I own. And I've been watching that unit for weeks. What made this even better was that over my 3 weeks of monitoring their chat, I discovered they had been relocating my belongings gradually, not all at once, but piece by piece while I was at work. They believed they were being clever by stealing stuff I wouldn't notice straight away. My old college textbooks, some tools from the garage, and winter gear I won't need for months. They had the entire system worked out. Talia would text when all was clear. Marissa would bring her SUV, and they'd load whatever they could fit. They photographed everything and kept notes of what they had taken and what was still to be grabbed. I drove directly there and cleared it out. Every box and piece of furniture had previously been moved. I had my own truck and relocated everything to a place across town that they will never discover. I changed the locks on their unit and prepaid for 6 months in my name solely. But this is where things become interesting. I didn't just shift my belongings. I replaced them. I packed their storage unit with everything from my home office that I'd been meaning to get rid of for years. Old broken devices, out-of-date computer equipment, and mountains of useless documents. It appeared as if someone had been there and cleared out valuable objects, leaving behind evident garbage. Then I went home to wait. Lydia returned around 5 p.m. with Marissa and Talia. They were all giggly and thrilled, as if they were about to pull off the ideal ambush. Vivian arrived at 6:30 with a manila packet, which I assumed contained the divorce papers. Lydia told me around 7 p.m. that it was time to leave for our anniversary dinner. We got into my car, and she told me to drive to Marissa's place. When we pulled up, I noticed movement through the windows and knew this was it. Lydia stated that she wanted to pop over briefly to pick up something. When we stepped in the door, they were all standing there with huge grins on their faces. Vivian stepped forward with the packet, and Marissa pulled out her phone, evidently ready to record. That's when I spoke the words I'd been practicing for 3 weeks. Before you start filming, you might want to check storage unit 247. Lydia turned absolutely white. Talia truly dropped her phone. Marissa began to inquire what I meant, but I could see the panic rising. I told them about Operation Divorce Dan. I was aware of every message, plan, and detail that they had spent months putting together. I took out my phone and began reading their own statements back to them. The room exploded. Lydia instantly began yelling that I had breached her privacy and that I was insane for spying on her intimate discussions. Vivian demanded to know how I had gained access to sensitive family chats. Marissa started calling me ill and manipulating. But here's what made the entire event so amazing. They could not deny what they had stated. Every hateful word, every plan to embarrass me, and every insult they'd hurled at me for months was right there in black and white. Lydia tried to say that they were simply venting and that they never intended to carry out any of it. But I had screenshots from yesterday of Talia confirming the moving truck rental and Vivian discussing serving me papers tonight. The disagreement lasted over an hour and turned heated. Talia insisted that I deserved everything they had planned because I had been a slacker for years, holding Lydia back. She said I was dead weight, and Lydia could have married someone successful if she hadn't been stuck with me. Marissa told me I was pathetic and that their family had never wanted me there, that they had been hoping Lydia would wake up for years. But Vivian, she became really angry. She began telling me that I had no idea who I was dealing with, that her family had connections and resources I couldn't fathom, and that I'd made a tremendous mistake believing I could outwit them. She kept talking about how they might ruin my life, how they had means of punishing anyone who crossed them. Lydia was torn between trying to deny everything and being upset that I'd invaded her private. She claimed at first that the messages were simply harmless venting between family members. The next minute, she was shouting that I was a controlling freak with no right to listen in on her private talks. That's when I informed them that the storage container had been cleared out, that the moving firm they had engaged would arrive Monday to an empty space, and that every aspect of their ideal plan had already come apart. I also revealed a few other information I'd kept private, such as how I'd been recording our chats for the past 2 weeks, using an app on my phone. How I documented each time Lydia lied to me about her plans. How I had been constructing a case demonstrating their conspiracy to cheat me. The screaming match that ensued was spectacular. Lydia accused me of stealing from them, despite the fact that it was my own possessions. Talia began demanding that I tell them where I had relocated everything. Marissa threatened to contact the cops. Vivian escalated, claiming she was going to ruin my career and that she had people who could ensure I never worked in technology again. She was raving about how her late husband had amassed a tremendous network and how she could financially and professionally destroy me. So I called their bluff. I took out my phone and called 911 right in front of them. When the operator answered, I explained that I wanted to report identity theft and credit card fraud, and that I had evidence proving that someone had used my financial information to rent storage space without my knowledge. They shut up quickly. I assured the operator that I had fixed the immediate situation, so the police did not come out. But the point has been made. They were aware that everything they had done may be used against them legally. I drove home, leaving them standing there. Lydia rode back in utter silence, likely attempting to think out her next move. When we arrived inside, Mother walked straight to our bedroom and closed the door. I could hear her on the phone with someone, most likely one of her sisters, but couldn't understand what she was saying. About an hour later, she returned and attempted an entirely different technique. She suddenly apologized, stating the group conversation was merely family drama and she never meant any of it. She claimed her sisters had pressed her into agreeing to their plan, and she had been trying to find a way out. She stated she loved me and wanted to work things out, and that we could go to counseling to repair our marriage. She even proposed that we repeat our vows and have a proper celebration of our 10 years together. I listened to every word but did not believe a single one. This woman had spent months preparing to publicly humiliate me. She had described me as miserable and worthless to her family. They had planned to have me served with divorce papers as entertainment for their social media. But here's the thing, Reddit. This was only the introductory shot. They believe that losing storage access and having their plot exposed is the worst I can do to them. They believe Lydia can sweet-talk her way out of this, and things will return to normal. They have no notion what happens next. See, while they spent months arranging Operation Divorce Dan, I spent years preparing for something similar. I have financial tactics they are unaware of, legal protections they have never considered, and contingency plans for events they cannot even envision. Remember how I indicated in my first post that I was accumulating wealth through investments and side projects? There's a lot more to the story. For the past 4 years, I have been actively defending myself from this type of family manipulation. Every asset, account, and legal document has been constructed to prevent them from destroying my finances. The storage unit switch was simply me letting them know I wasn't the stupid, defenseless victim they assumed I was. The real pressure hasn't even begun yet. Monday morning will be pretty intriguing for all 3 of these women. Let's just say Vivian's claims about having connections and riches are going to be challenged in ways she never expected. Update 2. I promised you that these women would have an exciting Monday morning. That was an understatement. First, let me address some of the criticisms from my previous update. Yes, some of you say I should have just walked away and started over, but that would have meant allowing them to continue believing they could ruin people without consequences. These women spent months plotting to publicly humiliate me and render me homeless for their pleasure. Monday began early. Lydia departed for work about 7:30 a.m., still trying to pretend that everything was normal between us. She even kissed me goodbye and expressed her desire that when she returned home, we might chat further about mending our marriage. I simply nodded and encouraged her to have a good day. At 8 a.m. sharp, I made my initial move. See, during my 4 years of preparation, I wasn't just accumulating wealth and protecting assets. I'd been studying everything I could about each member of this family, including their employment, finances, responsibilities, and stress areas. Information is power, and I had been gathering it meticulously. These women thought they knew everything about me, but they had never taken the time to learn about my abilities. They observed a quiet coder who didn't create a fuss at family events, so they felt I was weak and controllable. Lydia works for a small marketing firm that runs social media campaigns for local businesses. What she doesn't realize is that I've been providing web development services to 3 of their largest clients for the past 2 years, not through her company, but directly with the business owners. At 8 a.m., I emailed detailed offers to all 3 clients, proposing to manage their whole digital presence in-house for substantially less than they are presently paying her company. By 9:15 a.m., I'd signed contracts with 2 of them and received verbal commitments from the third. Lydia's firm lost 60% of their income in 90 minutes. Marissa works as a rental property manager for a company that manages approximately 40 apartment units throughout town. What she doesn't realize is that I knew her supervisor Brandon from college. We weren't close friends, but we maintained loose contact via LinkedIn. At 10 a.m., I called Brandon and informed him that I needed to discuss a severe issue with one of his employees. I outlined how Marissa had been exploiting company resources for personal vendettas, notably her access to tenant information and management systems to orchestrate harassment campaigns against family members. I never accused her of anything criminal. I only presented the facts. Marissa had used her work computer to look at storage options for their Operation Divorce Dan. She had planned personal activities during working hours, including moving truck coordination. She'd even utilized the business vehicle for several of their relocation excursions. Brandon took this extremely seriously. By noon, Marissa was in a meeting with HR to discuss her inappropriate use of company resources and violation of privacy policies. Talia came next, and she was the easiest target. Talia works part-time in a dentist office and relies on weekend catering engagements to make ends meet. She's established a solid reputation for hosting small events and parties around town. What makes this excellent is that the majority of her clients book her based on social media recommendations and word-of-mouth referrals. I spent Monday afternoon writing elaborate social media postings about my recent anniversary celebrations. Nothing malicious, nothing that may land me in legal trouble. Just candid accounts of how specific local service providers let me down at what should have been a special occasion. I detailed how a food organizer I'd hired for a family function was surreptitiously conspiring with relatives to ruin the event. I sent copies of her own messages describing her efforts to disrupt our celebration. I marked every local event planning organization, wedding venue, and party supply store in town. I posted to all of the community Facebook groups where people frequently inquired for catering recommendations. By Tuesday morning, Talia had lost 3 future weekend engagements and received several communications from potential clients indicating that they had decided to use alternative caterers. But Vivian was the major attraction. Remember how she repeatedly threatened me with her connections and resources? How did she imply that her late husband had established a network of strong people capable of destroying me financially and professionally? So I decided to test those connections. See, Vivian's husband used to own a small construction company before passing away 5 years ago. She maintained the business name and license valid after his death, despite the fact that she no longer undertakes construction work. She occasionally utilizes it for tax considerations and to retain corporate credibility in social situations. What she does not realize is that having an active business license entails specific legal obligations and reporting requirements. And if you are not actually executing commercial operations, there may be issues with licensing boards and regulatory organizations. On Tuesday afternoon, I filed formal complaints with both the State Contractor Licensing Board and the local Business Regulatory Office. I recorded how the company appears to be idle despite having active licensing, expressed concerns about potential misrepresentation to regulatory organizations, and demanded official investigations into its operations. Again, nothing unlawful on my part, just a concerned citizen with reasonable queries about business compliance and licensing procedures. But this is when things become really fascinating. By Wednesday morning, all three ladies had begun to panic. Lydia returned home on Tuesday night, upset, because her supervisor had called an emergency meeting to discuss their client losses. Marissa was facing a formal investigation at work and probable dismissal. Talia was desperately trying to repair her reputation while her weekend earnings vanished. And Vivian had received official notices from two distinct regulatory bodies demanding information about her business operations and informing her of upcoming compliance checks. On Wednesday evening, they all arrived at my place together. This time, there was no faking sweetness or pretending everything was all right. They were enraged and desperate for answers. Lydia screamed that I was destroying innocent people's livelihoods because of a petty family squabble. She insisted that her co-workers would lose their employment as a result of my vengeful behavior. Marissa insisted that I call Brandon and inform him that everything I had reported was false. She was worrying since she needed her job to pay for her car and housing, and she couldn't afford to be jobless. Talia cried and begged me to remove the social media posts because she couldn't afford to lose her catering income. She stated that her rent was due next week and that she planned to pay it with weekend bookings. But Vivian was different. She stopped begging and threatening. She was calculating, attempting to determine how much I knew and what I was going to do next. She asked me clearly what I wanted and what it would take for me to quit. She claimed they had learned their lesson and would leave me alone if I stopped targeting their employment and businesses. That's when I revealed the truth. This was not about teaching them a lesson or convincing them to leave me alone. This was about teaching them what happens when you try to destroy someone who has spent years training to protect himself. I informed them that what they had lost so far was only the beginning. That I'd spent 4 years gathering the tools and connections to defend myself against exactly what they'd attempted to do to me. And now they'd know directly what it's like to have someone ruin the life they've made. Vivian asked what I wanted, what they could do to put an end to this. I informed her that there was nothing they could do. They had made their decision to plan Operation Divorce Dan. They would now have to face the consequences. That's when she said something that helped things fall into place. She told me I had no clue what I was up against, that their family had been dealing with troublemakers like me for decades, and that I was about to find out why people in this town knew not to cross them. She claimed that they'd been sheltering Lydia from making mistakes her entire life, and that marrying me was the biggest mistake she'd ever done. They'd spent 10 years watching me keep their daughter from reaching her full potential, and they weren't about to let me ruin her future. Finally, I realized why they disliked me so much. It was more than just feeling inferior to them. They truly believed that by simply existing in Lydia's life, I was ruining it. From their perspective, I was the impediment to their kid reaching her full potential. They considered me as a burden, preventing her from having the prosperous husband she deserved. In their minds, Operation Divorce Dan was not cruelty, but rather an intervention. However, recognizing their motivation did not change anything. If anything, it made me more determined to demonstrate them how mistaken they had been about who was truly in charge here. I informed them that everything they'd seen so far was only a preview of what the full consequences would be like. That every step I'd made had been thoughtful and intentional, with the goal of addressing the exact issues that each of them was most concerned about. Friday morning, they'll all receive a very special delivery that will make everything I've done thus far appear like practice rounds. Because they still don't realize that I'm not attempting to teach them a lesson or get them to apologize. I'm gradually undermining the cushy life they've established while preparing to destroy mine. And we are just getting started. Final update. This is my final update. What transpired over the weekend was exactly what I had been working toward for 4 years. Friday morning arrived, and my promised special delivery was exactly on time. At 9 a.m., suddenly, 3 different process servers appeared at 3 distinct addresses. Lydia was served at her office, in front of her co-workers. Marissa was in her apartment building, where all her neighbors could see. Talia is at the dental office where she works part-time. Vivian received her package at home. The documents were eviction notices, but not the ones you'd expect. See, here's something I never told any of them during our 10 years together. Lydia and I reside in the same house, which she believes we both own, and I bought it outright 3 years ago with revenues from my side businesses. Her name never appeared on the deed, the mortgage, or any other official documents. She has been living there as my guest the entire time, ignorant that she has no legal title to the property. The eviction notice gave her 30 days to evacuate the premises, claiming irreconcilable disagreements and a breakdown in their domestic partnership. Completely legal and completely enforceable. But it was not all. Marissa's apartment? It turns out that the building is owned by a property investment business with whom I have been doing web development work for the past 18 months. When I expressed my worries about their property manager's misuse of corporate resources and potential liability issues, they took it seriously. Her lease termination notice mentioned infractions of building policies and possible conflicts of interest with the management business. Talia rents a little house from an elderly couple living out of state. She has no idea that for the past year, I have been in charge of their property management website and online rent collection system. When I notified them about their tenants' involvement in harassment campaigns and the potential reputational damage to their property, they declined to extend her month-to-month lease. And Vivian. Her scenario was the most complicated, and also the most satisfying. The regulatory inquiries I initiated revealed some noteworthy anomalies in her corporate records. Nothing unlawful, but enough to cause major issues with her property taxes and homeowners insurance. It turns out that having an inactive company license while claiming residential property exemptions creates some complicated legal gray areas. Her notice was not an eviction, but a foreclosure warning. The issues with her business status prompted a review of her mortgage terms, and minor technical infractions gave the bank grounds to cancel the loan. By Friday afternoon, all three women had phoned me, not together this time, but individually, each attempting a different strategy. Lydia came home distraught and begged me to reconsider. She stated she'd do anything to save our marriage, including break off communication with her family, if I only let her stay. She agreed to go to counseling and change everything about herself to compensate for the Operation Divorce Dan plan. She even offered to sign a postnuptial agreement, granting me ultimate authority over our finances. I listened carefully and informed her that her 30-day period began today. Marissa called me at 6 p.m., completely frantic. She claimed that losing her job and apartment in the same week would wreck her finances. She offered to compensate me or to work for me for free. Anything to persuade me to cancel the property managers. She kept insisting that she had learned her lesson and would never intervene in my life again. I informed her that the ramifications of her actions were only beginning to unravel. Talia arrived at my house Saturday morning, sobbing uncontrollably. She claimed she had already lost the majority of her catering business and was about to become homeless. She continued asking what she could do to put an end to this, what she could provide me to make things right. She said she had some savings and would pay me every penny if I could help her keep her rental home. I reminded her that she was delighted to capture my reaction for TikTok when they thought they were ruining my life. I asked her how it felt to be on the other side of the equation. However, Vivian responded differently. She did not beg, cry, or offer me anything. She arrived at my house on Saturday evening with a cold, calculated expression on her face and told me that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. She stated her family had connections I couldn't comprehend, resources I didn't understand, and problem-solving strategies I wasn't expecting. She explained that she had spent the previous 2 days making phone calls and that I was about to discover why people in this town know better than to cross her family. I inquired about how those connections were working out for her foreclosure concern. That's when she began to break. She revealed that most of her husband's former business acquaintances had moved away or retired in the previous 5 years. That the formidable network she had been frightening me with consisted primarily of recollections and old business cards. She claimed she had been attempting to project an image of influence and control in order to safeguard her family's reputation, but the reality was far from that. Her husband's death had left her with more obligations than assets, and she'd been struggling financially for years, pretending everything was okay. The company license issues were not simply bureaucratic. They were the final blow, revealing how perilous her situation truly was. By Sunday morning, the reality had set in for all of them. Lydia had spent the weekend frantically calling family and friends, attempting to locate somewhere to stay. However, word had spread about our marital issues, and most people were unwilling to become involved in what appeared to be a complicated divorce situation. Marissa had been rejected emergency housing aid because her income loss was too recent to qualify for the programs. Her savings account couldn't pay a security deposit and the first month's rent for a new place. Talia had attempted to stay with friends, but with her image ruined in the local catering community, she was unable to provide any services in exchange for lodging. She had spent Saturday night in her car in a Walmart parking lot. And Vivian, the foreclosure process was hastened due to corporate compliance concerns. She had fewer than 2 weeks to make a big payment or locate alternative housing. On Sunday evening, they all arrived at my place for the final time. This was not the heated exchange from earlier in the week. This was sheer desperation. They stood on my porch, appearing fatigued, defeated, and terrified. Lydia had clearly been crying for hours. Marissa kept checking her phone, as if she were waiting for a miracle call. Talia appeared to have not slept. Vivian appeared to have aged 10 years in the last week. Lydia spoke first, stating they were sorry for everything and that they had never intended for things to escalate this far. That Operation Divorce Dan was just ridiculous family drama that spiraled out of control. Marissa stated that they recognized they'd made a tremendous mistake, had learnt their lesson, and would never do anything like this again. Talia was crying as she spoke, claiming she was sorry for wanting to capture my humiliation and that she realized how cruel and thoughtless it was. Vivian said they begged me for forgiveness, that they'd all learnt their lesson and simply wanted a chance to restore their lives. I listened to every word and then told them exactly what I had planned to say for 4 years. I explained that everything that happened to them was a direct result of their own choices. Operation Divorce. Dan was not a lighthearted family drama, it was a determined attempt to wreck my life for their pleasure. I reminded them that they had planned to record my reaction after losing my home, marriage, and dignity, that they were thrilled to watch me suffer while celebrating my demise. I explained that the only difference between their strategy and my response was that I had actually succeeded. They kept begging, offering to do anything, and pledging to make amends in any way they could. I told them that nothing they could offer me would change the outcome of their actions. That they had taught me how much their family valued loyalty and respect, and that they were now experiencing what it was like to be the recipient of that lesson. As I closed the door, I heard them outside talking about where they were going to sleep that night. It's been 3 days since then. I've seen Lydia's car parked behind the grocery store, where she appears to spend her nights. Marissa has been residing in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat. Talia and Vivian have been using Vivian's automobile to travel between venues in order to avoid detection by security or police. They've been texting, calling, and leaving voicemails with the same message. We apologize. We did not mean it. Please. The desperation in their voices becomes more apparent with each communication. Lydia left me a 40-minute voicemail yesterday, crying and apologizing over and over. But I am not answering. 4 years ago, when I first sensed their scorn and began preparing for the prospect, I promised myself that if they ever sought to destroy me, I would be ready to destroy them in kind. I spent those years expanding my resources, making relationships, and portraying myself as untouchable. They wanted to watch me lose everything while laughing and recording it for social media. Instead, they are sleeping in their cars, whereas I am living happily in my home, with my thriving business and financial security intact. The operation was named Divorce Dan. I suppose you could say the operation was a total success, just not in the way they had anticipated. My sister moved in to help after my surgery, but slept with my husband instead. After hiring an investigator, I exposed their affair to my family. My 28-year-old female world has been turned upside down over the last few months, and I'm still trying to understand all that has transpired. My husband Brian, 31, is a male, and my younger sister Sabrina, 25, is female. Brian and I have been married for 4 years. We met in college and I always believed we had a good relationship. We purchased our first home 2 years ago in a quiet community outside of the city. Brian works in IT, and I am a nurse at the local hospital. Sabrina has always been our family's golden child. She is the youngest of 3 children, and our parents, Helen, 55 female, and Noah, 58 male, have always treated her differently. Sabrina got away with everything while we were growing up. If something went missing, she was never to blame. Someone else must have caused the mess. Our eldest brother Isaac, 32, moved to another state after graduation and now rarely comes, which I better understand. The problem began 3 months ago, when I had to have emergency gallbladder surgery. The rehabilitation was expected to last a few weeks, but complications kept me bedridden for about 6 weeks. I couldn't lift large objects, couldn't drive, and required assistance with basic domestic duties. Brian originally took time off from work, but after a week, his employer began urging him to return. That's when our parents suggested Sabrina come stay with us and help out. She had recently finished her marketing degree and was between jobs, so the timing looked ideal. I was concerned at first because Sabrina and I had never been close, but Brian felt it was a fantastic idea. He explained that it would relieve him of stress and provide me with someone to chat to during the day. Sabrina arrived carrying 2 enormous luggage and quickly took over our guest room. She transformed it with her own images and plants, making herself entirely at home. At first, I felt grateful. She prepared meals, did laundry, and kept me company while Brian was at work. She would sit on my bed and tell me about her college pals and her dreams for a career in marketing. After the second week, however, things began to seem strange. Sabrina started wearing my clothes without asking. She'd shower with my costly shampoo and skincare goods. When I addressed it, she smiled and said, "What's the big deal? We're sisters." She also began rearranging items in the kitchen and living area, stating she was simply attempting to make things more orderly for me. Brian appeared to like her company more than I expected. He would come home from work and immediately start talking to Sabrina about his day. They would cook dinner together while I rested upstairs, and I could hear them laughing and conversing. When I joined them for meals, the discussion seemed awkward, like if I was interrupting something. One evening, around 3 weeks into Sabrina's visit, I went downstairs to get some water and discovered them watching a movie together on the couch. They were sitting closer than was necessary, with Brian's arm spread across the back of the couch behind Sabrina. When Brian noticed me, he hastily moved his arm, and Sabrina scooted to the opposite end of the couch. They both pretended nothing had happened, but the discomfort in the atmosphere was undeniable. I began to pay greater attention after that. Sabrina would always volunteer to deliver Brian's coffee in the morning before he left for work. She would text him throughout the day, ostensibly to keep him up to date on my condition, but their conversations seemed to go on for much too long. She began washing his laundry alongside mine, and I saw she was handling his things with apparent care, folding everything properly. The breaking point occurred during my 5th week of rehabilitation. I was now feeling better and began to move around the home more. One afternoon I decided to snooze and walked upstairs at 2 p.m. I couldn't sleep, so I came down an hour later for tea. As I entered the kitchen, I could hear conversations coming from the laundry room. I paused in the hall and listened. Sabrina said quietly, commenting on how difficult it must be for Brian to deal with everything. Then I heard Brian's voice speak quietly, emphasizing how much he loved everything she was doing, and how she made things simpler. There was a long silence, followed by what sounded like movement, as if someone was approaching someone else. I entered the kitchen and shouted out to see if anyone wanted tea. They both emerged from the washing room quickly, but Sabrina's face was flushed, and Brian appeared guilty about something. Sabrina claimed she was merely assisting Brian in troubleshooting a washing machine, but when I examined, it was functioning normally. That evening, Brian was especially attentive to me, bringing me food in bed and repeatedly asking if I needed anything. It felt forced, like he was trying to make up for something. Sabrina stayed in her room for most of the night, which was uncommon given that she usually spent her evenings in the living room watching TV. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. Brian and Sabrina had created inside jokes and shared illusions that I wasn't aware of. They would start talking and then abruptly stop as I entered the room. Sabrina started cleaning the house incessantly, reorganizing everything to her liking and acting as if she was doing me a tremendous service. The final straw occurred on a Thursday evening during my 6th week of rehabilitation. I was feeling considerably better, and I proposed that Sabrina return to our parents' place soon, as I was almost back to normal. Brian and Sabrina quickly objected, claiming that I still needed assistance and that it was too soon for her to depart. Later that night, I awoke about midnight and discovered Brian was not in bed. I got up to look for him, assuming he couldn't sleep and was watching television. I searched the living room and kitchen but couldn't find him. Then I observed that the guest room door was locked, which was unusual because Sabrina generally slept with it slightly open due to her concern about being in strange locations. I remained in the corridor for a few minutes, listening. I could hear low voices behind the door, followed by what I recognized as Brian's laugh. My stomach sank. I returned to our bedroom and claimed to be asleep when Brian arrived about an hour later. He crept gingerly into bed, hoping not to wake me. The next morning, I told Sabrina that I felt much better and that she should probably go home for the weekend. She appeared worried and stated that she believed I still required additional assistance. Brian agreed with her, stating that we should not rush my recovery, but I persisted, and they both grudgingly agreed that she would leave on Sunday. That's when I decided to check Brian's phone. I'd never done anything like that before. But something told me I wanted to understand what was going on. On Saturday morning, as Brian was showering, I checked his messages. What I discovered made me sick to my stomach. Brian and Sabrina exchanged dozens of text messages within a few days of her arrival. They started out innocently enough, but rapidly became increasingly personal. Sabrina had been sending Brian photos of herself all day, not inappropriate ones, but selfies and shots of her cooking or cleaning. Brian had been complimenting her on how beautiful she looked and how much he valued everything she did. The messages increased from there. Sabrina wrote about how she had always thought Brian was too good for me, and she could see he wasn't happy in our marriage. Brian answered by claiming Sabrina understood him in ways I never did. They discussed how natural it felt to spend time together and how they wished things were different. The most recent messages came from the night prior. After I went to bed, they exchanged texts about how much they would miss each other when Sabrina left. Brian had wrote that the previous several weeks had been the happiest he had felt in years. Sabrina responded that she had been preparing to tell him how she felt for a long time, and that my operation provided the perfect occasion. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to my phone. Then I sat on our bed, trying to decide what to do next. My sister had planned to seduce my husband and took advantage of my medical issue. Brian had betrayed me with my own sister while I was recovering from surgery at our home. I chose not to address them immediately. Instead, I pretended that everything was fine for the rest of Saturday. I helped Sabrina pack her belongings and thanked her for all she had done. She hugged me farewell on Sunday morning and promised to see me again soon. Brian drove her to our parents' place, and when he returned, he appeared calm and distracted. It's been a week since Sabrina departed, and I'm trying to determine what to do with the knowledge I have. Brian has been seeming guilty and distant, and he is always messaging someone, but he is being more careful to hide his phone. I'm sure they are still in touch. I haven't informed anyone what I discovered since I am unsure who I can trust. Our parents adore Sabrina, and have always supported her in every argument. My brother lives too far away to be of any assistance. I feel absolutely alone in this position. I'm not sure if I should face Brian directly, speak with Sabrina first, or tell our parents what occurred. Part of me wants to pretend I never read those messages and attempt to preserve my marriage, but I don't think I can live with the truth. I kept thinking about how they continued their emotional affair although I was bedridden and reliant on their assistance. Has anyone else faced a similar situation? I'm not sure what my next moves should be. Update 1. I never expected such a large response to my original post. Thank you to everyone who provided advice and support. A lot has transpired since my first post, and I wanted to give you all an update. After I first blogged, I spent approximately a week gathering additional proof. I realized that simply having screenshots of text exchanges wouldn't be enough, especially because Sabrina has always been adept at manipulating events to make herself appear innocent. I needed to be totally certain of what was going on before making any judgments. I began by generating a Google Voice number and a false social media profile. I utilized this to contact some of Sabrina's college pals and seemed to be organizing a surprise for her. These chats taught me a lot about my sister's history. Apparently, this wasn't her first time pursuing another person's partner or husband. One girl told me how Sabrina systematically ruined her relationship with her long-term boyfriend during their junior year by continually contacting him and showing up at his apartment with food and academic help. I also decided to conduct a more thorough inspection of our home security system. We have cameras at both the front and back entrances that record footage for 30 days. I reviewed the recordings from Sabrina's time with us. What I discovered was disturbing. On several times, I noticed Brian and Sabrina standing close together on our back patio, talking in an intimate manner. In one late-night video, I could plainly see them hugging for far longer than is suitable for a brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Meanwhile, Brian's actions became increasingly clear. He was continually checking his phone and smiling at the texts. He began working late more frequently, stating that his supervisor was assigning him extra projects. He also started criticizing me in ways he hadn't previously, commenting on my cooking, attractiveness, and energy level. It seemed like he was attempting to justify something to himself. 2 weeks after my original article, I decided to drive past our parents' house to see if Brian's car was still there. I had told him I was going to see a business acquaintance, but I ended myself parking down the street from my boyhood home. Sure enough, Brian's car was in the driveway. I waited for 2 hours, and when he eventually emerged, Sabrina led him to his car. They stood there conversing for a few minutes before she hugged him farewell. It was not a casual family hug. She placed her arms around his neck and hugged for at least 30 seconds. I confronted Brian that evening when he returned home. I informed him I knew he had been at our parents' place and questioned why he had lied about working late. He quickly grew defensive, accusing me of being paranoid and controlling. He explained that Sabrina had phoned him because she was having problems with her automobile, and he had come over to assist her with some technical concerns. When I mentioned that our father is fully capable of assisting with automotive problems, Brian stated that Noah was preoccupied with work, and Sabrina had explicitly requested his help. I knew he was lying, but I didn't admit I had read the text messages yet. Instead, I informed him that his conduct had altered during Sabrina's time with us, and I was concerned about our relationship. Brian became enraged and claimed that I was being unreasonable, and that my recovery from surgery had made me wary of everybody. He said Sabrina had been nothing but helpful, and I was ungrateful and anxious. The debate became heated, and Brian ended up staying in the guest room that night. He apologized the next morning, saying he was worried about work and didn't want to lose his temper, but his explanation about helping Sabrina with her car didn't make sense, especially since I knew from the camera tape that they had been spending time together on a daily basis. I've decided to hire a private investigator. I understand that sounds excessive, but I needed to know the entire extent of what was going on. I hired a PI that specializes in marriage investigations and comes highly recommended. I provided him all of the information I had and requested him to record Brian and Sabrina's actions for 2 weeks. The results were disastrous. The PI furnished me with images and comprehensive reports from Brian and Sabrina's meetings at several sites throughout town. They ate lunch together at restaurants, met at a park near our parents' house, and spent hours at a downtown coffee shop. The photographs show them holding hands, kissing, and acting like a couple. The most devastating evidence came from a motel parking lot. The PI had followed them there on a Tuesday afternoon, when I assumed Brian was at work. He had images of them entering the hotel together and exiting 3 hours later. In the images from their departure, they appeared relaxed and cheerful, walking close together with Brian's arm around Sabrina's waist. I also noticed that Brian was lying about his job schedule. The PI contacted his office and confirmed that Brian had been taking half-days and long lunch breaks on a regular basis over the previous month. His boss had expressed worry about his performance and spoken with him about his attendance concerns. When I received the PI's report, I spent an hour crying in my car in the hospital parking lot during my lunch break. For more than a month, my 4-year-old husband and my sister had been having an open affair. They had used my medical emergency and recovery to cover up their connection, and they had been lying to me every day. I resolved to inform our parents before facing Brian and Sabrina. I drove to their house on a Saturday morning, knowing Sabrina would be there. I brought printed copies of the PI's photographs and thorough report. When I stepped into our parents' living room, Sabrina was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, watching television. Our mother was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, while our father read the newspaper. It appeared to be a normal family situation, which made what I was about to do feel much worse. I asked everyone to sit down because I had something important to say. I began by recounting how I found Brian and Sabrina were having an affair. Sabrina instantly began crying and denied everything, claiming I was insane and paranoid. Our parents appeared bewildered and concerned. Then I showed them the photographs. The evidence was undeniable. Pictures showed Brian and Sabrina holding hands, kissing, and entering the hotel together. Sabrina's denials got increasingly frenzied, but the images spoke for themselves. Our father grew enraged, not at Sabrina, but at me for having them followed. He accused me of violating their privacy and claimed that hiring a private investigator was an extreme and unacceptable solution to marital issues. Our mother began crying, claiming that there must have been a misunderstanding. The most unexpected reaction came from Sabrina herself. After approximately 10 minutes of denying everything, she stopped crying and looked straight at me. She claimed Brian told her that our marriage had been finished for years and that he was going to divorce me anyhow. She stated that Brian had described me as frigid and unapproachable, and that he had never been truly satisfied with me. She went on to claim that she and Brian had a genuine connection and understood one another in ways that he and I couldn't. She stated that Brian had confided in her about how lonely he felt in our marriage and had considered leaving me long before my surgery. Our parents sat in startled silence as Sabrina continued to speak. She stated that she would not apologize for finding happiness with someone who genuinely liked her. She stated that Brian was the one who started their relationship and she attempted to resist at first, but their love for each other were too powerful. In that moment, I realized I'd never seen this side of my sister before. The sweet, innocent younger sister I thought I knew was vanished, replaced by someone who could betray her own family without remorse. Our folks weren't sure what to say. Our mother started crying, claiming she couldn't believe what was occurring. Our father appeared more concerned about the family's reputation than with the real betrayal. Neither of them protected me nor criticized Sabrina's actions. I left their place and headed home to wait for Brian. I had resolved to face him with everything I knew and inform him that I wanted a divorce. I was tired of trying to rescue a marriage that he had already shattered. Update 2. The confrontation with Brian did not go as intended, and what occurred next made me doubt all I thought I knew about my family. Brian went into the house that Saturday evening, after I had shown my parents the evidence, as if nothing had occurred. I was seated at our kitchen table, with all of the pie images spread out in front of me. When he saw them, his face turned absolutely white. I told him I knew everything and asked him to go. Brian stood there for a long time, staring at the photographs. Then he sat down across from me and began speaking. What he told me altered everything. According to Brian, the affair did not begin as I expected. He said that Sabrina had been contacting and texting him for months prior to my operation, frequently when she knew I wouldn't be present. She would interrogate him about our connection and make comments about how I didn't seem to value him enough. He said he initially thought she was just a concerned sister, but her texts became more intimate and sexual over time. Brian stated that he should have warned me about Sabrina's actions, but he didn't want to cause difficulties for me or my family. He understood how difficult my relationship with my parents might be, and he didn't want to further matters by whining about their favorite daughter. When my operation was set, Brian stated that Sabrina quickly offered to come stay with us. She told our parents that she was concerned about my rehabilitation and wanted to assist, but she had been privately texting Brian about how this would be an excellent opportunity for them to spend more time together. Brian claimed that he tried to make things proper while Sabrina was staying with us, but she was always looking for chances to be alone with him. She'd wait until I was napping or resting to start talking about how miserable she felt I was, and how she believed Brian deserved someone who valued him more. According to Brian, Sabrina initiated their first kiss. He claimed it happened in the laundry room the day I overheard them conversing. Sabrina had approached him and informed him she had been in love with him when they first met. Brian admitted that he didn't stop her from kissing him, which is when their physical relationship began. Brian stated he never told Sabrina that our marriage had ended, or that he intended to leave me. He claimed those were lies she told to excuse her actions to my parents. He stated that her attention had puzzled and impressed him, particularly during a tough period when I was healing and our house was chaotic. I asked Brian why he continued the affair after Sabrina left our home if he truly wanted to save our marriage. He claimed Sabrina had threatened to tell me that he had seduced her if he attempted to terminate things. She also threatened to inform our parents that Brian had taken advantage of her while she was staying at our house to assist with my rehabilitation. Brian gave me texts from Sabrina that corroborated his account of events. Sabrina was definitely the one seeking the relationship and making plans to meet. There were further messages in which she expressed how she had always wanted Brian for herself, and how she deserved to be happy even if it meant hurting me. However, the most disturbing messages were those in which Sabrina outlined her long-term ambitions. She had written to Brian about how she believed they should wait until after the holidays to tell everyone about their relationship, allowing people to adjust to the concept. She had also sent him texts on how she believed they should divide our assets and whether Brian thought I would agree to let them take the house. Brian told me that he had begun to suspect Sabrina had been arranging the situation for far longer than he had previously believed. He stated that some of her comments during her visit to our house made more sense now, such as when she mentioned that our guest room would make an excellent office space or advised improvements to our kitchen arrangement. I wasn't sure whether to believe Brian's version of events. On the one hand, the text messages he showed me corroborated his story. On the other hand, he had continued to participate in the affair and lied to me for weeks. I told him I needed some time to consider and requested him to wait someplace else while I determined what to do. Brian left to stay with his brother, and I spent the next week mentally reviewing our entire relationship. I recognized there were symptoms of Sabrina's inappropriate interest in Brian that I had overlooked or rejected. She insisted on sitting close to him during family dinners. She would make excuses to touch him while talking, placing her hand on his arm or shoulder. She always inquired about his profession and interests in greater detail than one might expect from a sister-in-law. I also remembered Sabrina making subtle comments about our relationship that I assumed were merely sisterly worry. She'd inquire if Brian and I were pleased or comment that Brian was worried. She had also made various comments over the years about how she believed Brian was too good for me, which I had taken as compliments but suddenly appeared menacing. While Brian was staying with his brother, I decided to conduct my own investigation. I contacted Sabrina's college roommate, whose name I discovered in some old social media posts. What this woman said disturbed me. Sabrina's roommate claimed she had a tendency to become enamored with other people's guys. She would investigate their relationships, learn about their interests, and then find ways to involve herself in their life. The roommate told me about at least 3 cases in which Sabrina successfully ended relationships by convincing the man that his partner did not appreciate him enough. The roommate also informed me that Sabrina had explicitly addressed me and Brian in college. She had shown her roommate images of Brian and discussed how she thought he was ideal for her rather than for me. The roommate stated that she had always found Sabrina's statements regarding my relationship disturbing, but she didn't know how to respond at the time. I also discovered that Sabrina had been questioning our parents about my marriage for years. She would express concern about Brian's happiness, or say she thought I took him for granted. Our parents had rejected Sabrina's comments as a concerned sister, but now I could see that she had been sowing seeds of doubt about my relationship for a long time. Armed with this new information, I resolved to address Sabrina directly. I drove to our parents' house on a Thursday evening, knowing she would be there. Sabrina was in her former bedroom, where she had been living since we moved out. I told Sabrina that I was aware of her history of targeting other people's relationships and had spoken with her college roommate. Sabrina initially tried to deny everything, but when I showed her the text conversations Brian had shared with me, her tone changed dramatically. Sabrina gave up pretending to be the innocent victim and became aggressive and defensive. She told me she had never understood what Brian saw in me, but she had always knew she was better for him. She explained that Brian had been unhappy in our marriage for years, and she had just recently given him the guts to admit it. Most shockingly, Sabrina said that she had been preparing to pursue Brian for a long time. She claimed my operation had been an excellent chance, but she would have found another way soon. She said that Brian had suppressed affections for her and that she had simply helped him recognize what he actually wanted. Our parents walked in during this talk and overheard Sabrina's confessions. Our father quickly began making excuses for her actions, claiming that she was young and made a mistake. Our mother began crying again, pleading with both of us to find a way to work things out as a family. But I was tired of preserving unhealthy family relationships. I informed my parents that Sabrina had purposefully targeted my marriage, and that Brian and I were divorcing as a result of her actions. I stated that I would not be attending any family parties or gatherings where Sabrina was present. Our father became unhappy with me for issuing ultimatums, accusing me of being dramatic. Our mother accused me of attempting to break the family over a mistake that could be forgiven. Neither of them appeared to see that this wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment, but a deliberate attempt to destroy my marriage. I left my parents' house that night, knowing that my connection with them was definitely ended. Sabrina had taken not only my husband, but also my parents and my sense of belonging within my own family. Update 3. I'm posting this final update because several individuals have asked about my divorce and family status. The last 2 months have been rough, but I wanted to relate how things ended. Brian and I went through with our divorce. Despite his assertions that Sabrina had manipulated him, I couldn't get over the fact that he had deceived me at one of my most vulnerable moments. Our divorce was finalized last week, and Brian has already moved in with Sabrina at our parents' home. While I was at work, our father helped him move his possessions out of our house, which I thought was cowardly but not unusual. We had been married for less than 5 years and did not have children, so the property division was uncomplicated. I kept the house since I could afford the mortgage payments on my own, while Brian stole the majority of our savings. He also accepted responsibility for his school loan and credit card problems. What struck me was how rapidly Brian and Sabrina's relationship deteriorated once they no longer needed to sneak around. Brian and Sabrina have been fighting continuously since he moved into our parents' house, according to my brother Isaac, who still speaks with our parents on occasion. Apparently, the reality of their situation differs significantly from the ideal they built throughout their romance. Sabrina expected Brian to be thankful and romantic, but he appears disgruntled of how the scenario happened. Brian appears to blame Sabrina for driving him into a relationship he wasn't ready for and for losing his marriage before he knew what he really wanted. Sabrina, on the other hand, expected Brian to be entirely committed to her, but he has been reclusive and grumpy since moving in. Our parents are struggling with having both Brian and Sabrina residing in their home. Our father has been moaning to Isaac about the tension and drama, and our mother is fatigued from attempting to maintain the peace. What they assumed would be a temporary arrangement until Brian and Sabrina found their own homes lasted weeks with no end in sight. I've had no contact with Sabrina or our parents, and my interactions with Brian have been limited to divorce paperwork. Brian has attempted to contact me several times, stating he wants to apologize and explain his behavior, but I have not responded to his messages. I've also blocked Sabrina from all social media platforms and altered my phone number. The most difficult thing has been losing contact with our parents. My mother periodically calls my new number, but I do not answer. She leaves voicemails begging me to come home for supper or to call her back, but I am not prepared to have that talk. Our father has made no attempt to contact me, which both hurts and does not surprise me. I've been working on restoring my life and job. The hospital where I work has been really supportive throughout this scenario, and my boss even helped me switch to a different shift so I wouldn't have to worry about running into Brian while he was picking up Sabrina from somewhere. I've also been working to enhance my relationship with Isaac. He and his wife Camilla have been quite supportive, and they have invited me to join them for the holidays. Isaac acknowledged that he relocated across the nation to get away from our family's dysfunction, and he's been instrumental in validating my decision to cut off communication with our parents and Sabrina. I learned from Isaac that Sabrina had lost the marketing job she had finally acquired. Apparently, her employer learned about her role in breaking up my marriage through mutual contacts, and they determined she wasn't a suitable fit for their workplace culture. Our parents are currently financially supporting her while she hunts for a new job. I've also learned that numerous members of our extended family have taken sides in the situation. The majority of our aunts and uncles have been supportive of me, particularly after understanding the circumstances of what transpired. Our grandma on our mother's side has been particularly vocal about her dissatisfaction with Sabrina's behavior and our parents' reaction to the matter. Brian is no longer present in the house, therefore it feels more tranquil. I redecorated numerous rooms and converted Brian's office into a reading space for myself. I've also started asking friends around more frequently, which I rarely did when Brian and I were married. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready to reconcile with either our parents or Sabrina. The betrayal feels too deep, and their reaction to the circumstance demonstrated how little they valued me in comparison to Sabrina. Our father's instant support of Sabrina, as well as our mother's attempts to minimize what happened, demonstrated that they will always place Sabrina's comfort over my well-being. Some have urged that I contemplate forgiveness for my own peace of mind, but I'm not ready just yet. Right now, I'm focusing on creating a life that does not revolve around attempting to gain acceptance from individuals who have never truly valued me. I have been dating someone new for the past month. Lucas is an instructor whom I met through a mutual buddy at work. He is aware of my divorce and family situation, and he has been patient and compassionate regarding my trust difficulties. It's good to be with someone that values me without any games or manipulation. Looking back, I can see that my marriage to Brian would not have survived even without Sabrina's intervention. We had drifted apart over the years, and neither of us had made an effort to continue our relationship, but I'll always be bitter about how it ended and the role my own sister played in destroying everything we'd worked for together. I have no regrets about hiring a private investigator or addressing everyone with the evidence I acquired. Some may think it was extreme, but I needed to know the truth and have proof that couldn't be disputed or manipulated. Without that evidence, Sabrina would have continued to play the victim, and our parents would have made excuses for her actions. I'm sharing this tale to let other individuals who may be in similar situations realize that they're not crazy to suspect betrayal, especially if it includes family members. Trust your instincts and don't allow others tell you that you're being paranoid when something feels strange. I also want people to understand that cutting off communication with toxic family members is sometimes the healthiest option, even if it is painful and lonely. I'd rather be alone than spend my life attempting to gain love and respect from individuals who would never offer it to me. That is where things stand right now. I'm going on in my life, and I'm finally beginning to feel optimistic about the future. My sister's kids threw food and spilled chocolate milk on me, so I refused to buy Christmas gifts for them. Then she accused me of child abuse. My sister Marissa is 32 and I am 28. She has 3 children, Tyler, 11, a male, Chloe, 9, a female, and Harper, 6, a female. Yes, these are their true names. And yeah, that should tell you something straight. Now, Marissa and her husband Colin have been married for about 12 years, and they both work respectable jobs, so they are not struggling financially. Now, I need to provide a complete picture of what I've been dealing with these kids for literally years, since this Christmas didn't happen in a vacuum. It began when Tyler was probably around 4. Marissa thought that traditional parenting was too restricting, and she wanted to create free-thinking, empowered children. This meant that these kids had never heard the word no in their lives. I mean it literally. Marissa and Colin utilized gentle redirection instead of concrete boundaries. The first time I realized how awful things were getting was at Tyler's 6th birthday celebration at Chuck E. Cheese. This child observed another child playing a game he wanted to play, so he simply approached the machine and pulled the other child off it. When the other youngster began crying and his parents arrived, Marissa responded by telling Tyler, "I see you really want to play that game, and your feelings are valid, but maybe we can find a way for everyone to have fun." No apologies to the other family, there are no penalties for Tyler. The other parents glanced at her with disgust. But things get worse. At family gatherings, these children treat everyone's homes as personal playgrounds. Chloe decided she didn't like the ham our mother made for Easter and dumped her entire dish on the floor, demanding chicken nuggets. Instead of punishing her or forcing her to clean up, Marissa asked her mother if she had some chicken nuggets. When Mom declined, Marissa sent Colin to McDonald's to fetch some. I watched my 65-year-old mother get on her hands and knees to clean up the mess, as Chloe smirked. Harper, the 6-year-old, has a habit of screaming, and I mean screaming, when she does not get exactly what she wants, precisely when she wants it. We're talking full-on, ear-piercing shrieks that would make a banshee jealous. During my cousin's wedding last summer, she had a meltdown because she wanted to handle the bride's flowers. Marissa's solution? She stepped up to the altar in the middle of the vows and asked the bride if Harper might have the bouquet for a minute. The bride was too surprised to say no, so this 6-year-old spent half the ceremony brandishing a $300 bouquet. Now this is where things get personal for me. I am childless by choice, And I've always been the fun aunt who spoils the kids in our extended family. I adore kids. I simply don't want my own. But with Marissa's children, every interaction is like walking through a minefield. 2 years ago, I took all 3 of them to the zoo for Tyler's birthday. I spent more than $200 on tickets, meals, and souvenirs. Harper decided she wanted a stuffed elephant from the gift shop for $45. When I told her that I had already bought each of them a souvenir and that was enough, she threw herself on the floor of the gift shop and began wailing as if someone was murdering her. Tyler immediately weighed in, saying it wasn't fair that Harper was upset, and Chloe burst into tears because the screaming hurt her ears. Instead of leaving or scolding Harper, I surrendered and bought the elephant to silence her screams. But then Tyler wanted a $60 remote control car because Harper had received something extra. Chloe requested a second stuffed animal to match Harper. By the time we left the gift shop, I had spent an additional $150 on top of everything else, and I felt thoroughly duped and taken advantage of by some youngsters. That was my wake-up call, but it took another 1.5 years before I really put my foot down. The final straw came during my birthday meal in October. I'd made reservations at a fancy restaurant. Marissa insisted on bringing all 3 kids, which I was fine with at first, but within 10 minutes of sitting down, things were chaotic. Harper was standing on her chair, attempting to reach the breadbasket at the next table over. Tyler was loudly protesting that there was nothing on the menu he liked and demanded to know why I hadn't chosen a restaurant with chicken tenders. Chloe was using her fork to toss butter packets throughout the restaurant. When I urged Marissa to please keep the kids under control because other diners were staring, she said I was being judgmental and that youngsters should express themselves. They express themselves by flinging dairy items at strangers. Apparently the breaking point came when Harper knocked over her full glass of chocolate milk, spilling it all over my white outfit and pocketbook. Instead of apologizing or assisting with the cleanup, Marissa chuckled and stated, "Well, that's what you get for wearing white around kids. It was my fault for expecting basic table etiquette." I ended up leaving my own birthday dinner early, with a chocolate milk-stained outfit and an utterly wrecked night. The server appeared ashamed, and I left a generous tip because I was embarrassed by their actions. That night, I decided I was finished. Completely done with indulging this bullshit. So, when Marissa texted me in early November to ask what I was getting my babies for Christmas, I told her straight out that I wasn't going to buy them anything this year. She quickly called me to inquire what she had done wrong. I said that I found every interaction with her children difficult, and that their actions during my birthday dinner had deeply wounded my sentiments. Marissa responded by telling me that I don't understand what it's like to be a parent, and that I have unrealistic expectations of children. She accused me of being petty and nasty, punishing innocent children for simply being children. But here's the thing, I've spent time with many other children in our family and social group, and none of them behave like way. My cousin's children are 7 and 9 years old, and they can say please and thank you, clean up after themselves, and eat a meal without making a fuss. My best friend's 8-year-old helps clear the table and has never tossed food or knocked anything over on purpose. Marissa claims her children are vibrant and self-aware, but what I see are 3 small individuals who have never been taught that other people count or that their actions have consequences. I understand Marissa's parenting style is her decision, and I'm not attempting to influence how she raises her children, but I also don't believe I should have to finance and reward conduct that makes every family gathering miserable for everyone else. My parents constantly telling me that I am the adult and should be the bigger person, but I feel like I've been the greater person for years while seeing these youngsters learn that they can treat others as they want without consequence. Isn't it time for someone to show them that their actions influence how others wish to engage with them? So, Reddit, am I the one who refuses to buy Christmas presents for children who have never shown any appreciation and whose behavior frequently disrupts family events? Update 1. I received a call from Marissa at 3 p.m., and she was screaming. Like, I had to keep the phone away from my ear because she was that loud. Apparently, her friend Jessica follows this subreddit and recognized the story right away. Jessica gave Marissa the link. With the text, "Girl, is this about you?" Marissa read the entire post, including the 100+ comments, and she is furious. She began the call by accusing me of publicly embarrassing her and her children on the internet and discussing sensitive family business with outsiders. She started ranting about how I made her appear like a bad mother and that I had no right to reveal sensitive information about her family. I tried to explain that I didn't use anyone's real identities and was truly seeking guidance, but she wouldn't have it. She accused me of being harsh for writing about her children in that manner, and she had no idea how much I despised her entire family. Then she really went nuclear. She told me that she has been shielding me from what others think of my lifestyle choices, and that everyone in the family thinks I am selfish for not having children. and that I won't understand true love until I become a mother. She claims Colin has always felt I was frigid and judgmental, and they have been walking on eggshells around me for years because they feel sorry for me. That section hurt far more than I imagined. I've always thought Marissa and I were close, despite our differing views on parenting. But wait, things get worse. After Marissa finished shouting at me, she immediately contacted our parents and told them what happened. By her version, I mean she told them I posted horrific things about her children on Reddit, called them names, and mocked them in public. Mom contacted me around 20 minutes later. She was heartbroken and repeatedly asked how I could do this to her family. She said Marissa was frantic and the kids were asking why me hates them. When I tried to clarify that I never said I disliked the kids, only that their behavior was troublesome, Mom stopped me off, saying that attacking children online was a threshold she never thought I'd cross. Dad called next, and he was angry. He accused me of betraying the family and stating that what happens in our family should stay inside it. He informed me that Marissa is struggling and that instead of assisting her, I made her a laughingstock on the internet. He stated he's ashamed of how I handled the situation and that I should apologize right away and delete the post. The truth is, I'm not sure I want to apologize because I didn't lie about anything. Everything I stated happened, but I'm beginning to doubt if publishing about it was the best option. Marissa gave me screenshots of some of the comments, which called her a poor mother and described her children as horrors. She claimed that reading those comments made her physically ill, and that she couldn't look at her children without worrying about what strangers on the internet were saying about them. She told me that she has been trying her best as a mother, and that she chose gentle parenting because she was raised with rigorous punishment, which caused her worry and low self-esteem. She stated that she never wants her children to experience the dread and embarrassment she did growing up, and that she would rather have confident, assertive children than children who are scared to communicate their needs. I honestly had no idea Marissa felt that way about our childhood. We had fairly normal parents who expected us to follow the rules and suffer penalties if we didn't. I never considered it upsetting, but she may have had a different perspective. She's now claiming that if I'm going to Christmas dinner, she won't bring the kids because she doesn't want them to be around someone who sees them as monsters. Mom begged me to apologize and remove the post so that Christmas is not ruined. My brother also called, and he was rather sensible about the situation. He said he knows why I was irritated, and that Marissa's children had behavioral difficulties, but that posting it on Reddit was probably not the best idea. He believes I should apologize for the post, but maintain my boundaries about the Christmas gifts. Colin has not contacted me personally, but Marissa claims he is furious with me and believes I am a toxic person who has been pretending to care about their family while secretly condemning them. He's been telling Marissa for years that I look down on them, and this post confirms him correct. The worst part is that some of the commenters discovered Marissa's social media profiles. She had to keep everything private since people were commenting on her images of the children. Nobody said anything directly unpleasant, but people were making comments like, "So well behaved," and "such angels." Clearly mocking given my article. Marissa is convinced that this will follow her children for the rest of their lives, and that when they are older, somebody will discover this post and hurt them. She claims I've harmed her children by writing about them in this way. I'm sorry things became so bad. I honestly didn't think anyone we knew would see it, and I certainly did not want Marissa to be bullied online. At the same time, I'm irritated because she's acting as if I made everything up, when all I did was accurately recount what happened. Some of you mentioned in the comments that Marissa's parenting approach is not actually gentle parenting, it's simply lenient parenting with a fancy name. Some individuals believe Marissa's children will struggle in the real world if they do not understand that their acts have repercussions. All of that makes sense to me, but I'm wondering whether I made a mistake by airing this publicly, rather than setting my limits privately and dealing with the resulting family turmoil. However, talking to Marissa personally has never worked. Every time I try to address the kids' conduct, she becomes defensive and launches an assault on her parenting. She invariably responds, "I don't understand because I don't have children." And the debate ends with me backing down to keep the peace. I assumed that gathering outside viewpoints would help me determine whether I was being reasonable or if I was expecting too much. But now it feels like I've made things worse. Mom wants me to submit an update stating that I was wrong and that Marissa is a wonderful mother. Dad wants me to remove everything and pretend nothing happened. Marissa demands a public apology from me and an admission that I lied about her children. I'm scheduled to travel to my parents' house tomorrow for our annual pre-Christmas cookie baking day, but Marissa has stated she won't come if I'm there. Mom is over herself since we've done this every year since Marissa and I were youngsters. I do not know what to do. Update 2. Jesus Christ. I don't know where to begin with what happened at Christmas dinner yesterday. I am writing this from my residence. First, let me catch you up on what has happened since my last update and Christmas. I didn't apologize or remove the post, which was probably not the best decision for family harmony, but I couldn't bring myself to confess I was lying when I wasn't. The cookie baking day was cancelled because Marissa refused to go if I was present. Mom was devastated and kept phoning both of us, attempting to mediate, but Marissa was certain that she would not be in the same room with me until I made things right. For over a week, it appeared that Christmas dinner would also be cancelled. Marissa informed my parents that she was uncomfortable bringing the kids around me, and Dad was unhappy with me for ruining Christmas. But then Mom had what she described as a fantastic solution. She offered that Marissa and her family come for Christmas dinner, and then I could come for dessert after they went. That way, the kids could still spend Christmas with their grandparents while Marissa didn't have to deal with me. I was hurt that I was being excluded from my own family's Christmas celebrations, but I accepted because I didn't want to be the reason the kids didn't get to visit their grandparents on Christmas. Marissa obviously changed her mind at the last moment. She concluded that having me visit at all, even after they had left, was disrespectful to her family. She informed Mom that my presence would ruin the entire day since she'd be worried about how I'd criticize her children afterward. So Mom took another executive choice. She contacted me on Christmas morning and said Marissa was already on her way over, and maybe I could stop by for a few minutes to say Merry Christmas, and then go before things got awkward. I should have said no. I should have stayed at home and watched Netflix, like my intuition told me to. But it's Christmas, you know, and I've missed my family. I arrived at my parents' house about 2 p.m., and the tension was palpable from the moment I walked in. Marissa was in the kitchen, assisting Mom with dinner preparation, and she literally turned her back on me when I said hi. Colin was in the living room with the kids, and he simply nodded at me without making eye contact. Mom worked so hard to keep everything normal. She was extremely happy and conversational, asking me about job and my apartment. Obviously trying to break the awkward quiet. Dad was cordial but cold. He responded when I spoke to him, but did not start a conversation. Initially, the youngsters appeared to be quite typical. Harper ran up and hugged me as if nothing had happened, which only made me feel worse about everything. Tyler and Chloe were distant, which was most likely due to their parents educating them on how to act around me rather than at me. I had brought a bottle of wine for my parents and some nice hot chocolate bombs for the kids, not Christmas presents, but a peace offering. When I gave the kids the hot chocolate, Harper was ecstatic and wanted to make it straight immediately. Mom said it was all right, and I was beginning to think things might work out. Everything went horribly wrong at that point. Harper requested hot chocolate with milk instead of water, so Mom heated milk on the stove. Harper was hopping around the kitchen, growing increasingly excited, and she kept attempting to touch the pot to help. Mom and I advised her several times to step back since the stove was hot, but she didn't listen. Marissa was right there, but she was giving me the silent treatment, and obviously decided not to parent either because she didn't say anything to Harper about stove safety. You can probably guess what came next. Harper went up to grab the pot handle, and although I caught her arm before she touched it, she lost her balance and collided with the stove. She did not get burned, but she became afraid and began crying. I quickly knelt to ensure she was okay. And she appeared fine, just startled, but Marissa had fully lost her wits. She rushed across the kitchen, took Harper away from me, and began shrieking about how I had endangered her kid. I tried to explain that I was actually attempting to keep Harper from getting hurt, but Marissa screamed that I grabbed Harper and was taking my rage out on an innocent child. She continued screaming I was violent and that she knew I was going to hurt her children eventually. Colin sprang up and came in my face, telling me I had crossed a line and demanded that I go right away. Dad tried to calm everyone down, but Marissa was upset, screaming I was dangerous and she should call the cops. The worst part was that Harper stopped weeping and looked around, puzzled, wondering why everyone was yelling. Chloe began crying as a result of the shouting. I kept trying to explain what had happened, but no one listened to me. Marissa had concluded that I had purposefully tried to hurt Harper, and nothing I said would change her view. Mom was crying and pleading with everyone to settle down. She kept saying it was Christmas, and we needed to figure it out as a family. But Marissa had already packed up the kids' belongings and instructed Colin to grab the car. As they were leaving, Marissa turned around and informed me that I was everything wrong with our family and that she was tired of pretending I cared about anyone other than herself. She claimed that the Reddit article demonstrated that I hated her children and was now physically threatening them. Colin informed my parents that if I attended any future family occasions, Marissa and the kids would not come. He stated they had to choose between Marissa's family and me since he didn't want to expose his children to someone who despised their presence. Dad shouted at me after they had departed. He stated I had wrecked our family and that Marissa's children are the light of his life, and he might not get to see them again because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Mom was sobbing and saying she couldn't understand how we had gotten to this point. She kept asking why I couldn't just apologize and get things back to normal. I tried to clarify once more that I had done nothing wrong, both with the stove incident and with the initial post. But Dad stopped me off and told me that if I couldn't understand how my behavior was harming the family, maybe Colin was correct, and I shouldn't attend family occasions anymore. So I left. I spent Christmas night alone in my apartment, ordering dinner and wondering how rescuing a 6-year-old from a hot stove led to my exclusion from my own family. The trouble is, I keep revisiting that moment in my memory, and I know I didn't grab Harper violently, or endanger her. I stopped her from touching the hot pot handle. In a normal home, that would have resulted in a thank you, not charges of child abuse. But Marissa was already primed to regard me as the villain because, to the Reddit article, she was hunting for evidence that I'm a bad person who despises her children, and she interpreted my behavior accordingly. I understand that she is protective of her children. I really do. However, the fact that she quickly moved to, "You're trying to hurt my daughter," rather than, "Thank you for keeping her safe," demonstrates how damaged our relationship is. My brother called to check on me this morning. He didn't attend dinner because he was spending Christmas with his girlfriend's family, but Mom told him what happened. He stated that, based on what Mom told him, Marissa appears to have overreacted, but that the family is now broken and he is unsure how to heal it. He also added that Mom is upset since she fears she will never see Marissa's children again, and Dad is discussing future holidays without me to keep the peace. The irony is that if I had just let Harper grab that pot handle and get burned, Marissa would most likely have blamed me for failing to stop her. There was no way I could win in that situation. I'm not sure what to do now. Update 3. I'm finished. I'm done with all of this. And I finally said what I had been holding back for years. So this is what occurred. After Christmas, I spent about a week feeling sorry for myself and wondered if I was the true issue. I kept thinking about what Dad said about destroying the family, and I considered reaching out to apologize just to make things right. Then my cousin Sophie called me. Sophie is my mother's sister's kid, and she attended the wedding last summer where Harper had the bouquet meltdown. She had heard about the Christmas disaster and wanted to check on me. During our chat, Sophie said something that made my blood boil. Apparently, Marissa has been telling her extended relatives that I attacked Harper at Christmas dinner and that she is thinking about getting a restraining order against me because I am unstable and dangerous around children, a restraining order to prevent a child from touching a hot stove. Sophie stated that the majority of the family does not accept Marissa's story because they have all experienced the children's behavior personally, but that Marissa is overly dramatic about the situation and portraying herself as a protective mother shielding her children from their violent aunt. That was it. I traveled to Marissa's house yesterday afternoon, while Colin was at work and the kids were at school. I knew she'd be home because she works part-time and normally takes Tuesday afternoons off. When she opened the door and saw me, she tried to close it again, but I put my foot in the doorway and told her we'd talk whether she wanted to or not. She threatened to contact the cops, but I told her to go ahead because I had much to say to them about how she lied about what happened at Christmas. She let me in, but she remained by the door with her phone in hand, as if she was prepared to call 911 if I made any abrupt movements. The entire situation was so ludicrous that I nearly laughed. I sat down on the couch and simply began talking. I told her I was tired of being portrayed as the villain because I had basic standards about how people should respect one another. I told her I was weary of her turning every talk about her children's conduct into an assault on her parenting, and I was tired of walking on eggshells around her family. Marissa tried to interrupt me with the standard, "You don't have kids, so you don't understand." But I quickly shut it down. I informed her that I didn't need to be a parent to see when children are reared without limits or respect for others. Then I let her have it. I informed her that her gentle parenting is really lazy parenting with a fancy name. I explained that she is so frightened of her children feeling uncomfortable or disappointed that she is educating them to believe the world revolves around them. I stated that every other kid I know can sit through a meal, play peacefully with others, and express basic thanks when someone does anything good for them, but her children behave like entitled little dictators because Mom has never trained them better. Marissa began crying, stating she was doing her best and didn't want her children to suffer the same childhood she did. She brought up the tough discipline issue again, saying she used to be afraid of disappointing our parents. I informed her that there is a significant difference between rigorous discipline and basic boundaries. I explained that teaching children to say please and thank you is not abuse, and that expecting them not to throw food or ruin other people's property is not traumatizing. Then I went for the throat. I informed her that her children would be sad in the real world since no one else would pander to their every desire like she does. I explained that teachers will not gently correct Tyler when he pushes other students. Chloe's future employers are unlikely to send someone to McDonald's if she doesn't enjoy the food offered at the office lunch. And that Harper's screaming episodes will make it impossible for her to establish friendships or relationships. Marissa was sobbing uncontrollably at this time, claiming that I was being unkind and that she loves her children and only wants them to be happy. I told her that loving your children meant preparing them for life, not protecting them from the consequences of their behavior. I told her that if she truly loved kids, she'd teach them how to operate in society, rather than teaching them to believe that other people exist solely to serve them. Marissa kept repeating that children make errors and are still learning. But I pointed out that they aren't learning anything since she never allows them to face the natural consequences of their actions. I informed her that when Harper cried for the elephant at the zoo and I still bought it, I showed her that screaming works. When Chloe threw her plate at Christmas dinner and Grandma cleaned it up while Colin went to purchase chicken nuggets, they taught her that other people will mend her mistakes and satisfy her needs. I informed her I wasn't the problem. The problem is that she is so focused on being the cool parent who never says no that she has forgotten her mission is to create productive humans, not to be her children's closest friend. Marissa tried to turn it around on me, claiming that I plainly despise children and am envious of her family. She stated I'm bitter because I'm alone and dislike seeing other people happy. I smiled and informed her that if she believes her family appears happy to others, she is deluded. I mentioned that every family gathering becomes a stress fest since everyone has to walk on eggshells around her children, and that she spends the majority of each event chasing after them, attempting to do damage control while pretending their behavior is normal. I informed her that Colin looks unhappy half of the time, that our parents dread hosting holidays because they have to childproof their entire house like they're anticipating a storm, and that other family members have begun to make excuses not to attend gatherings when her children would be present. That struck home. Marissa wondered if people actually talked about her children in that way, and I honestly said, yes they do. I mentioned that Sophie's children question why they can't behave like Tyler, Chloe and Harper, and Sophie must explain that different families have different rules. I informed her that cousin Daniel had stopped bringing children to his backyard picnics after Harper wrecked his garden and Chloe finger-painted his fence with ketchup. Marissa remained quiet for a long period after that. Then she asked me if I wanted her to hit her children or yell at them, as our father used to do. I informed her that I wanted her to be a parent, rather than a friend. I wanted her to say no when her children asked for ridiculous requests. I wanted her to make kids apologize when they damaged or inconvenienced others, and to follow through on the repercussions rather than simply threatening them. I told her that she should stop making excuses for poor behavior and stop acting as if anyone who expects basic decency from her children is attacking her as a mother. I said I love those kids, but I'm not willing to pretend that throwing tantrums, destroying stuff, and showing no gratitude is appropriate conduct just to keep the calm in the house. Before leaving, I apologized for publishing about our family troubles on Reddit, and explained why it felt like a betrayal. But I also told her that I was not sorry for anything I wrote since it was all true, and that hearing it from strangers might have helped her realize what everyone else had been too nice to say directly. Marissa stated that she needs time to think about everything and that she will talk to Colin about seeking professional assistance. I'm not sure if anything will truly change, but at least I've finally expressed what I've been thinking for years. My family used my money to buy my sister a $5,000 ring and threw a party without inviting me. Today, they begged for forgiveness, but it's too late. Hello Reddit, longtime lurker, first-time poster. This occurred throughout the last year, and I'm finally ready to tell the entire tale. This is going to be wild, so buckle up. Some backstory on me. I'm 31, male, and I work in medical device sales, earning roughly $170,000 per year. I've worked in sales for almost 8 years now. I started straight out of college and worked my way up through 3 different companies. I live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment in the city, drive a reliable Honda Accord, and I've always been the successful member of my family. Not trying to boast but setting the scene, because the financial condition is critical to this story. My family comprises of my parents, Gregory and Evelyn, both 58, and my sister Marissa, 29, a woman. My parents own a little landscaping company named Green Dreams Landscaping, which barely breaks even most months. They began it approximately 15 years ago, when Dad was laid off from his factory job, and it has been an ongoing struggle ever since. Mom assists with the books and customer service while works part-time at the local library to earn health insurance benefits. And Marissa, well, she's been attempting to become a social media influencer for the past few years with very little success. We're talking about someone who has maybe 200 Instagram followers and truly believes she'll make it big as a lifestyle blogger. She dropped out of community college after one semester to focus on her business and has since bounced between part-time retail jobs, usually leaving after a few months because the employment does not line with her personal ideals. This is where my friend Silas enters the picture. Silas works with me in medical equipment sales and is a straight-talking Chicagoan with no patience for BS. He's around 6 feet 2 inches, always wears well-pressed shirts and cuts through people's garbage with surgical accuracy. He's been warning me for years that my family takes advantage of me, but I've always dismissed it since family is family. Right? Wrong. So wrong. Silas grew up in a rough neighborhood where people would take advantage of your goodwill if you allowed them. His grandmother raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12, and she taught him early that love and money are not the same thing. He'd always argue that family who only calls when they're in need isn't truly family. But I assumed he was just cynical due to his difficult childhood. I should have listened to him years before. My family has treated me as if I were their own bank account for the past 6 years, since I began earning substantial money. It started small, like assisting with a car repair here, or covering a portion of the rent there, but it rapidly grew, and looking back, I can see how they systematically educated me to be their financial safety net. Marissa was the absolute worst offender. This girl has never had a consistent work in her life, yet she always needs money to establish her brand. We're talking about someone who has around 1/200th Instagram followers, labels herself an entrepreneur, and has business cards that read lifestyle content producer. She'd contact me about anything from new camera equipment to luxury apparel for her shots. The demands became a frequent occurrence, with the same pattern. "Hello, big brother, could you help me with my car payment? Just once, I promise. $480. An emergency room visit. My insurance did not cover anything, and I'm panicking. $750. Rent is due tomorrow, and I am short. The landlord is threatening eviction. $900. We require new equipment for content creation. This might be my big break. $1 and $200. Transmission failed. The mechanic says it will cost this much to fix. $1,400. And I paid every time, since that is what a family does. Right? That is what I told myself. Anyway, Marissa had a way of making every request sound like a life-or-death situation. She'd call, crying about how anxious she was, how she couldn't sleep, and how this one thing was preventing her from succeeding. She'd vow to repay me as soon as her next sponsored post came through or her YouTube channel was monetized. Of course, none of those things happened because her content was truly horrible. But I kept believing her because I wanted to support my younger sister's goals. My parents weren't any better, though they were more discreet about it. Dad would text me things like, "Business is slow this month. Can you help with the mortgage? We're really struggling here." Mom would call crying about unanticipated bills. The water heater died. The truck needed new tires. They received a surprising tax bill. I'd transfer money without inquiry because I believed I was helping my family get through difficult times. Silas would shake his head when I sent these payments. "Man, you're not helping them. You are making things easier for them. When was the last time any of them called to ask how you were doing? I'm not asking for money, I'm simply checking in to see if you're happy, dating someone, or need anything." I couldn't recall. Every conversation with my relatives eventually resulted in a financial request, generally within the first 10 minutes. Here's the pattern that emerged over time. Marissa would spend weeks on social media expressing her desire for something expensive. Designer bags, professional camera equipment, holiday places, high-end beauty items, fitness gear, you name it. She'd make intricate wish lists and mood boards, always posting about how these products would improve her content and push her company to the next level. Then she'd have an emergency that cost the same amount as those products. I'd send the money, thinking I was assisting with actual car repairs or medical expenditures, only to find her sharing images of her new items a few days later. When I asked her about it, she would give me an explanation. She received a wonderful price on the bag when her emergency was settled. Someone handed her the equipment. She found it in a thrift store. Whatever. However, I always gave her the benefit of doubt. Perhaps she was speaking the truth. Perhaps I was being paranoid. Perhaps Silas' cynical attitude had rubbed off on me. I was willfully blind to what was going on because I didn't want to think my sister was lying to me. The trend became so predictable that Silas began making jokes about it. Let me guess. Marissa's about to have a car emergency for exactly the cost of those designer shoes she's been posting about. And he was almost always correct. Looking back, I knew they had me fully trained. Marissa would create issues, I would send money. She would buy what she really desired. Then they'd all seem appreciative for approximately 5 minutes before the cycle again. I acted like a Pavlovian reflex. They'd ring the emergency bell, and I'd send funds. The real kicker came last Christmas. I went all out, spending about $3,000 on gifts for everyone because I had just completed a large transaction and was feeling generous. I got Dad the $850 professional-grade chainsaw he'd been seeking for the business. I bought Mom a high-end KitchenAid stand mixer for $450, which she had mentioned several times. And for Marissa, I actually purchased her the fancy shoes she'd been raving about, Louboutin red-bottom heels that cost me $1,100. Silas thought I was completely mad. You're buying $1,000 shoes for someone who's never said thank you in her life. She probably won't even wear them to any real events, just post pictures for her Instagram, then put them in her closet. I felt good about being kind. I succeeded, I could afford it, and I wanted my family to know that I cared about them. I pictured Marissa being appreciative for once, perhaps even saying something positive about having a supportive sibling who believed in her goals. That generosity was about to bite me worse than I could have ever anticipated. On December 18th, I'm winding off the largest sale of my career at work. A massive order from a hospital network that would pay me a commission of around $25,000, when I receive a message in our family group chat. My mom. Hi everyone. Change of plans for Christmas. We're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family. Hope you understand. I read the message 3 times and it didn't make sense. Immediate family. What exactly did that mean? We always celebrated Christmas with our immediate family. Anyway, it was just the 4 of us. Maybe my cousin Rowan and his wife and my aunt and uncle when they were in town. Something seemed odd right away. The wording was strange, and Mom never made decisions about Christmas without significant discussion first. She is the type of person who begins preparing Christmas dinner in October and contacts everyone several times to confirm food restrictions and present choices. I called Mom right from the office. Hey, I saw your message. What do you mean keeping it small? It's always just been us and maybe a couple other people. There was a strange pause. Mom usually launches into a 15-minute explanation of anything Christmas-related, but she appeared distant. Oh, you know, sweetie, we just want to keep things low-key this year. Quiet celebration, nothing fancy. Is money tight? I can help out like always. I was planning to send some cash for groceries and decorations anyway. That big sale just went through, so I'm happy to cover whatever you need. No, nothing like that. We'll catch up after the holidays. Okay, I have to go. Your father needs help with something. She disconnected up before I could ask any more questions. That was weird, considering Mom normally starts talking about Christmas plans in October. She would usually spend 20 minutes informing me about menu ideas, decorating themes, present suggestions for other family members, and asking what I wanted for supper. I quickly called Silas from my workplace. Something's weird with my family about Christmas. Weird how? They're keeping it small this year, but won't explain what that means. And Mom cut the conversation short, which literally never happens. She usually keeps me on the phone for an hour talking about Christmas stuff. Silas was quiet for a minute, and I could hear him tapping his pen on his desk, like he does when he is pondering. When's the last time they included you in planning anything? Not paying for it, actually planning it. I thought about it. I could not recall having been solicited for advice on family events. I simply showed up, gave costly gifts, and donated money for food and decor. Sometimes I'd make recommendations, but they'd usually respond, "Don't worry about it, we've got it covered." Listen, according to Silas. They're probably planning something and don't want you there for some reason. Keep your eyes open, and don't send any money until you know what's going on. Something about this doesn't smell right. I assumed he was being crazy, but something in my stomach told me he could be correct. Silas has good instincts for people. It's what makes him such an effective salesperson. 2 days later, I received another text from Marissa. Hey, need help with car repairs again. Mechanic says $1,300 for transmission work. Can you help me out? I'm completely broke and can't get to work without my car. This is so stressful. I haven't slept in 2 days. I sent the money right away, no questions asked, since that's what family does. However, in retrospect, I should have inquired as to why her automobile required gearbox repair when she had it repaired for $900 2 months prior. 3 days later, he sent a message. Hey son. Business equipment broke down right before the holidays. Need $800 for repairs to keep working through Christmas. Can you help out? We've got some big jobs lined up for January, but need the equipment working. Again, I transferred the funds without hesitation. I didn't even consider asking what equipment had broken down or why it was so expensive to repair. Looking back, I see I was sponsoring my own exclusion without even knowing it. Every dime I provided them was most likely used to plan the party to which I was not invited. Christmas Eve. I'm sitting in my apartment, convincing myself that spending the holidays alone was fine. I'd gotten some lovely takeaway from my favorite Italian restaurant, chicken parmesan with a side of pasta, and had some good movies lined up on Netflix. I assumed I'd make the most of a peaceful evening by catching up on some reading and possibly calling a few pals who were also spending the holidays alone. Around 8 p.m., my phone vibrates with an Instagram notice. Marissa had shared a new story. I almost didn't look into it because I was feeling sorry for myself, but curiosity got the best of me. What I witnessed caused my stomach to drop to the floor and my hands to shake. She was at my parents' house, but it wasn't the quiet, low-key party my mother had portrayed. The place resembled something out of a luxury magazine or a film set. Professional decorations are everywhere. Not the typical DIY crap we'd usually done, but genuine professional-grade string lights that must have cost hundreds of dollars. Elaborate centerpieces and cloth table linens instead of the standard plastic tablecloths. There were catering tables put up in the backyard, with what appeared to be professional food service, including chafing dishes and cloth-covered tables. I could envision a bartender in formal clothes preparing cocktails behind a real portable bar setup. This was not a potluck Christmas meal. This was a fully catered occasion. Present had to be at least 50 individuals present, possibly more. I could see automobiles lined up down the block and individuals I didn't recognize wandering about in the yard. But things became much worse. The following article featured Marissa showing off a ring, lifting her hand up to the camera with a big diamond catching the light. "OMG everyone," Dorian proposed. "Look at this gorgeous ring he saved up for. He's been planning this for months. I can't believe this is happening." Dorian has been her boyfriend for around 8 months. He works part-time at a vape shop in the mall and lives in his mother's basement. He drives a Honda Civic with a large spoiler and loud exhaust. This guy genuinely asked me for gas money last month because he was between paychecks, and now he's buying engagement rings that appear to be more expensive than his car. Then came the final whack to the face. A group film in which everyone toasts using actual champagne glasses, rather than disposable cups. "Best Christmas ever with the people who really matter," Marissa said into the camera, displaying her ring to everyone around her. I could see everybody there. I hadn't seen my extended family members in years. Family, friends, neighbors from my parents' block, and even some of my old high school acquaintances, whom I had introduced to my family throughout the years. People dressed up as if it were a wedding celebration, not a casual family Christmas. The only person missing is myself. My phone rang quickly. "Silas. You see that nonsense on Instagram?" "Yeah." My voice sounded choked. "That ring probably cost at least $3,000, maybe more. Where do you think a part-time vape shop worker got $3,000? And look at that party setup. That's not home decorations. That's professional event planning. Somebody spent serious money on this." I didn't need him to spell it out. Marissa had repeatedly approached me for money over the last 3 months. Car repairs, medical expenditures, and rental assistance. The amounts are $300, $750, $900, and $450. Total, $3,400. Dorian had borrowed money from Marissa, who in turn had borrowed money from me. She effectively crowdfunded her own engagement ring with my money, and then excluded me from the celebration. "Silas, I feel sick." "Don't feel sick. Get mad. This is war now. And you've got the bigger weapons. But first, document everything. Screenshot all of this before she deletes it." I spent the following hour taking screenshots of every single social media post from the party. Marissa's story, other people's blogs, images of the decorations, the meal, the ring, and group photos of everyone having a great time. I stayed awake till 3 a.m., scrolling over social media posts from the celebration. Every single individual present had posted something. Pictures of the extravagant decor, catered food, the professional bartender, Marissa's ring, and group photos of everyone having a great time. One post truly spoke to me. My cousin Rowan uploaded a photo of himself with my parents. All of them raising champagne glasses with the remark, "Nothing beats family Christmas traditions." So grateful for this amazing celebration and for family that knows how to do the holidays right. Family Christmas traditions as if I hadn't been a part of them. I felt like I wasn't a part of the family. Another post from my aunt featured the dessert table, professional-looking cakes and pastries that clearly did not come from a grocery store. The caption said, "Evelyn and Gregory really outdid themselves this year. This is what Christmas is all about." However, the worst one came from my mother's Facebook. She had shared a group photo of roughly 30 individuals gathering around the Christmas tree. Everyone is cheerful and holding beverages. The caption said, "Blessed to have such wonderful family and friends to celebrate with. Best Christmas ever. Grateful family. Christmas magic. I am not in the photo. I was not even mentioned." December 26th at 10:30 a.m. I had hardly slept and was still absorbing everything when my phone vibrated with a text from Dad. "Hey son, hope you had a good Christmas. Can you help us out with our January mortgage? We need $4,000. Thanks." I stared at that message for a whole 5 minutes. The arrogance was simply amazing. These people had more nerve than I could have anticipated. They excluded me from Christmas, used my money to purchase their extravagant party and Marissa's engagement ring, and filmed the entire event on social media to ensure I knew exactly what I was missing. And now they wanted more money, as if nothing had happened, as if I were just their personal ATM, devoid of emotions or recollection. I screenshotted the message and quickly forwarded it to Silas, along with a message. "You're not going to believe this." His reaction was quick. "Are you kidding me right now? They have some serious nerve. This is sociopathic behavior." I called him. "They just asked for mortgage money." "How much?" $4,000. Silas was quiet for exactly 3 seconds before laughing, but not in a funny way. More like the laugh you get when something is so ridiculous that it's almost unbelievable. These people have nerves of steel. They really think you're that clueless. They think you're going to just keep paying them forever, no matter how they treat you. "I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe they think I'm this stupid." "Believe it. Your sister probably spent so much on that party that they're broke now. Plus, she's got a wedding to plan, which means more requests for money coming your way, and they figured you'd just pay up like always, because you're their reliable ATM who never asks questions." He was completely correct. I'd been their dependable ATM for years, and they'd grown so accustomed to it that they assumed they could treat me like garbage and I'd still pay their lifestyle. What should I do? "Oh, I've got ideas, but first tell me something. How much money have you given them total over the years, not just this year, but everything?" I'd actually been keeping track of everything in a spreadsheet for tax purposes, as some of the larger amounts qualified as gifts. Over the last 6 years, it's around $73,000. $73,000? Are you serious right now? You could have bought a house down payment with that money. You could have bought a luxury car. You could have taken amazing vacations all over the world. Hearing the number aloud made it sound worse. That was more than most people earn in a single year. And I'd just given it away to individuals who obviously didn't respect me. "Here's what really gets me," Silas said, and I could hear him becoming upset on my behalf. "They didn't just exclude you. They planned an elaborate party, invited everyone you know, hired professional services, bought expensive rings, and documented the whole thing on social media to make sure you'd see exactly what you were missing. This wasn't an oversight or a miscommunication. This was deliberate psychological warfare. Why would they do that? What did I ever do to deserve this? Because they wanted to hurt you. This wasn't about wanting a small celebration. This was about putting you in your place, showing you that you're good enough to fund their lifestyle, but not good enough to actually be included in their family. They wanted you to know that they see you as a resource, not a person." The more Silas said, the angrier I became, not merely unhappy or upset, but actually furious. "All right, here's what we're going to do. But first, you need to understand something. Back in Chicago, my cousin tried to pull something similar with my grandmother after my grandfather died. She thought she could manipulate the old lady into giving her money while treating her like garbage. You know what happened?" "What?" "My grandmother cut her off completely and left everything to charity in her will. My cousin learned real quick that you don't mess with family money when you're not acting like family. I'm about to teach your family that same lesson. But we're going to do it right. This is going to be surgical." Silas was more than just good at sales. When driven, he turns out to be an excellent researcher. While I was feeling sorry for myself during the holidays, he had been conducting what he called reconnaissance on my family's circumstances. "I spent my time off doing homework on your family. You want to hear what I found? Because it's worse than you think." We went to our customary coffee cafe near the office the day after Christmas. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee and still felt like I was hit by a truck emotionally. "Your parents' landscaping business, they filed some paperwork 3 weeks ago, changed some ownership details. Want to guess what they did?" I had no notion, but I was getting a horrible vibe. "They transferred majority ownership to Marissa. Your sister, who's never touched a lawnmower in her life and wouldn't know a hedge trimmer from a chainsaw, is now listed as the primary owner of their business." I almost choked on my coffee. "What?" Why would they do that? Silas gave me the look that suggested I was missing something obvious. Think about it. If the firm is in her name, they can claim poverty based on their finances. The poor struggling landscaping business is barely making ends meet. Please help us, Adrian. However, Marissa now owns a 15-year-old business with established clients, equipment, and reputation. It was beginning to click, and I didn't like where it was headed. So while I was assisting them with their mortgage, you were accumulating equity in your property. They're probably going to transfer to Marissa too. They've been playing chess, and you've been playing checkers. This has been a long-term strategy to transfer their assets to her while retaining you as a financial backstop. I felt nauseated. How did you find this out? Business filings are public record if you know where to look. Took me about 20 minutes of searching, but here's the really good part. Want to know how much that engagement ring actually cost? How could you possibly know that? Silas showed me a screenshot from Dorian's social media account on his phone. Dorian tweeted about it on his Instagram story, tagging the diamond store and everything, gloating about how he had saved for months. I called the store yesterday, said I was looking at the same ring for my girlfriend. Guess the price. Just tell me. $4,600 plus tax makes it about $5,000 total. But the exact amount Marissa had borrowed from me over the past 3 months down to the 100. The car repairs that never happened. The medical bills that were fake. The rent emergencies that were lies. There's more. I looked into Dorian's background too. This guy has outstanding warrants for unpaid child support. He owes his ex over $7,000 and hasn't made a payment in 8 months. His wages are supposed to be garnished, but he works under the table half the time to avoid it. I was becoming angry now. Really, very angry. What else did you find? Your parents took out a second mortgage on their house 4 months ago. Guess how much they pulled out? I'm afraid to ask. $60,000. They've been crying poor to you while sitting on $60,000 in cash. And get this, the paperwork shows the loan was for business expansion. But according to their business filings, their revenue hasn't increased at all. If anything, it's gone down. Silas leaned back in his chair and stared at me intently. They didn't exclude you from Christmas because of space or wanting quiet time. They excluded you because they're planning to screw you over big time, and they didn't want you around to see the evidence of how they're really living. But why? I've always helped them. I've never asked for anything back. I've never made them feel bad about needing help. That's exactly why. You've trained them to see you as a resource, not a person. They know you'll always bail them out, so they don't need to treat you with respect. They can use you for money and exclude you from family events because they know you'll still be there next time they need cash. Silas got out his phone and showed me further screenshots. Look at this. Your mom posted on Facebook about their wonderful Christmas celebration and how blessed they are. Your dad posted pictures of all the expensive equipment he's been buying for the business. Equipment you probably paid for without knowing it. And Marissa, she's been posting about her successful year and her bright future while working part-time retail. That's when things became crystal clear. They weren't only using me for money anymore. They were aggressively taking from me and intending to cut me off completely once they no longer needed me. So, what do we do about it? Silas gave an unfriendly smile. It was the kind of smile he gives when he's ready to close a particularly difficult transaction. We're going to teach them why you don't bite the hand that feeds you. But we're going to do it smart, and we're going to do it completely legal. By the time we're done, they're going to wish they just invited you to Christmas. Silas and I worked together for the next week to create Operation Reality Check. The proposal was amazing in its simplicity and absolutely destructive in its possible implementation. First, I searched through my financial records, documenting every single payment I'd made to them over the previous 6 years. Every Venmo, Zelle transfer, check, PayPal payment, and wire transfer. I arranged everything into a precise spreadsheet with dates, quantities, what they said the money was for, and what it was actually spent for, based on their social media posts and my own observations. There were so many transactions that it took me 3 entire days. I had to sift through 6 years of bank accounts, payment app histories, and even old text messages to get the full picture. The ultimate total was $73,847, or over $74,000. Then Silas assisted me in researching the legal definitions of fraud and theft by deception in our state. It turns out that continuously lying about what you need money for can be considered criminal fraud, especially if there is a pattern of deception and the quantities are large. We are not going to sue them, Silas stated as we sat in his apartment figuring this out. We're going to do something better. We're going to make them face public consequences for their actions. People like this only understand embarrassment and social pressure. This is what we did. Step 1. I canceled all recurring payments I had set up for them. Their mortgage contribution is $200 per month. Marissa's car insurance is $180 per month. Dad's phone plan is $95 per month. Mom's credit card minimum payment, which I had been covering, was $150 each month, as well as a few other smaller subscriptions. Everything disappeared overnight. Step 2. I wrote a detailed document describing every lie they told me regarding money, along with screenshots of their social media posts to prove they were lying. Every emergency resulted in expensive items. They shared every problem that coincided with expensive holidays. Every time they claimed poverty while flaunting their new online items. Step 3. Silas assisted me in creating a simple web page outlining the timeline of their lie. We titled it The Truth About Financial Abuse and made it appear professional, factual, and not emotional or vindictive. We included everything: the business ownership transfer, the second mortgage, the engagement ring scam, the Christmas party exclusion, text message copies, redacted bank documents, social media screenshots, and the entire timeline. Step 4. The masterpiece. Marissa has always wanted to be famous, right? Silas' girlfriend works for a local TV station, and they were filming a feature in January about successful local families and their holiday customs for their New Year, New Beginnings series. We pitched them a story about Marissa's entrepreneurial success and her close-knit family, who help each other with business projects. We informed them about how she had lately taken over the family business and become engaged, painting a picture of this happy success tale. Marissa's ego couldn't resist the opportunity to appear on television discussing her business ownership and family values. When the news station called her, she virtually yelled with delight and quickly began organizing her costume and talking points. The interview was scheduled on January 8th. Marissa spent 2 weeks preparing, including purchasing new outfits, having her hair professionally done, and practicing her talking points about family values, business success, entrepreneurial spirit, and the need of having a support network. She had no idea what was coming. Silas and I spent those 2 weeks perfecting our website, acquiring further evidence, and planning for the aftermath. We also sent anonymous tips to Dorian's ex-girlfriend about his engagement and how he managed to finance the ring while owing thousands in child support. The television interview aired Tuesday at 11 a.m. Marissa appeared polished and proud, gushing about her family company and close-knit family while wearing professional cosmetics and an attire that cost more than most people's monthly clothing budget. She spoke on about family values, sticking together through thick and thin, and having friends you can rely on. When asked about business success, she remarked about carrying on the family legacy and creating something important with loved ones. "I'm so blessed to have a family that believes in me," Marissa said, beaming. "My brother especially has been so supportive of my entrepreneurial journey. He's always there when we need him. Family is everything to us, and we stick together no matter what." Discussing her recent engagement, she raved about Dorian's financial responsibilities, how he'd been saving for months for her ring, and how he recognized the importance of working hard and saving for things that important. Those quotes were going to haunt her forever. By 11:30 a.m., Silas and I had posted a link to our website in the comments with the simple message, "Here's the genuine story of this family's accomplishments and morals." The response was swift and overwhelming. Within 2 hours, people had seen our documented evidence of widespread family deceit, in stark contrast to Marissa's morning interview on family support. The real fireworks began when Dorian's ex-girlfriend discovered the story. She had been following him down for months due to overdue child support. Her popular social media post contained images of Dorian's extravagant engagement ring, screenshots of unpaid child support orders, and explanations of how he avoided obligations by living beyond his means. My phone vibrated around 2 p.m. I received calls from everyone who had attended the Christmas party I had been excluded from. Seeing the financial data set out clearly made folks realize how badly I'd been duped. My cousin Rowan called directly. "Adrian, I had no idea. Marissa told everyone you were too busy with work for Christmas, that you'd sent money but couldn't make it due to business commitments, and specifically asked them to celebrate without you." Neighbors and acquaintances began posting online, questioning how Marissa could afford her lifestyle without a permanent job, and how my parents appeared to have party money despite constantly whining about their struggles. The local news picked up the subject again for an evening show, concentrating on financial elder abuse and family manipulation, and using Marissa's morning interview as an example of how financial predators portray themselves as victims. By the evening, all three were at my apartment complex. I watched them quarrel in the parking lot for 20 minutes before heading upstairs. Mom was crying, Dad was enraged, And Marissa was absolutely devastated. "Adrian, we need to talk," Mom murmured nervously. "About what exactly?" Marissa pushed forward, her voice shrill and panicky. "You need to take that website down right now, it's ruining my reputation. Strangers are calling me a thief." Silas sat on my couch, munching on chips and watching as if it were premium entertainment. "Your reputation, Marissa. You stole nearly $5,000 from me for your engagement ring, then lied about it on television this morning." "It wasn't stealing. You gave me that money. You said it was for car repairs and medical emergencies." Dad's voice sounded tense and angry. "Son, family business should stay private. You're embarrassing all of us." Silas stood up. "Oh, now it's private. Where was that energy when y'all excluded him from Christmas and put it all over Instagram?" The epic hour-long argument ensued. Marissa yelled about my envy and how I was attempting to ruin her life. Dad demanded that I be a man and address things quietly. Mom lamented about the community's ruined reputation. Dorian attempted damage control. "Maybe Marissa could pay you back over time." I began laughing. "Dorian, you're $7,000 behind on child support and bought an engagement ring with my money. Marissa hasn't had steady work in years. Dad transferred his business to hide assets. Mom helped plan Christmas specifically to exclude me while taking my money. What exactly are we working out?" Mom totally broke out. "We'll do anything, Adrian. Anything. Please take down that website. The only terrible things about you online are documented facts." Marissa attempted ultimate manipulation. "If you really loved your family, you'd protect us from this embarrassment." Silas handed her Kleenex. "If y'all really loved family, you wouldn't have stolen from him for years, then excluded him from Christmas." They went through every manipulative technique imaginable. Guilt trips, wrath, bargaining, threats, phony apologies, and frantic begging. I told them 48 hours to return business ownership to Dad, issue a public apology for their acts, present a documented repayment plan, or I will file police reports for theft and fraud. They fled in panic, finally realizing that their acts had consequences. The next morning, Marissa uploaded a 4-minute Instagram confession video in which she admitted to lying about her financial difficulties, using my cash to pay for her engagement ring, excluding me from Christmas despite accepting my assistance, and years of taking advantage. She declared that she will be stepping away from social media for personal accountability and growth, as well as seeking therapy. Dad reclaimed business ownership and handed him a $15,000 check as partial reimbursement, along with a written apology and payment schedule. Dorian broke up with Marissa that day and returned to his mother's home 2 states away. Apparently, his mother heard the news broadcast and threatened to kick him out unless he began making child support payments. Sometimes the best retribution is simply letting folks know the truth. Influencer girlfriend mocked me before flying to Europe. By the time she returned, I had sold the car, emptied the house, and seized her website. My partner believed she was destined for greater success and chose to remake herself. I'm Damien, a 27-year-old guy, went along with it for a while and even encouraged her. However, the way she began treating me made it clear what she truly thought of me. One instance in particular opened my eyes, and I knew things weren't going to end as she had hoped. So my girlfriend Selena, a 25-year-old woman, thought she was the next great thing on Instagram. She used to have a good job in retail. Consistent salary, benefits, and everything else. Then one day, she announces her resignation since her brand required her undivided attention. Her brand was as if she were Nike or Apple. She gave me a long lecture about how being an influencer is the future and how she just needed 6 months of runway to explode online. For 6 months, I'd cover rent, utilities, groceries, and other mundane expenditures while she utilized her funds to fund her business. I figured, okay, let's see how serious she is. If she can actually make things happen, that's great. If not, I wouldn't have to hear about how I never believed in her. Spoiler, she was not serious. Business costs included shopping sprees, luxury coffee and flights across the country to take selfies in rented Airbnbs. She began to treat me more like an unpaid intern than a girlfriend. The way she'd shout out things like, "Can you hold this light for me? No, higher. No, lower. Juice, you're messing it up." Like, sorry, I didn't realize I signed up for film school. At first I let it go. I convinced myself it was only temporary, and she'd get it out of her system. But with time, it seemed like she saw me as one of her props. The boyfriend was supposed to be in the background and not disrupt the look. Meanwhile, I am the one who pays for the aesthetic. Fast forward to her big European trip. She organized a 3-week content creation tour with her 2 influencer besties, Dorian and Lyra. Consider budget Kardashians. The deal was that this trip would be her final big push before the 6-month period ended. After that, she'd have to start contributing again because I wasn't going to keep supporting her forever. I drove her to the airport. We're approaching the check-in counter when she notices Dorian and Lyra. They are dressed as if it is Paris Fashion Week, despite the fact that they will be sitting on a tiny plane for 10 hours. They take one look at me, a normal dude in comfortable clothes, and exchange a short side-eye smirk. You're familiar with the one. Selena freezes as if she has just seen a paparazzi camera. She whips around with a terrified expression and says, "Okay, you can stop here." I'm perplexed. What do you mean? I'll walk you to security. She groaned as if I had asked her to assist me churn butter in the midst of the terminal. She looks to her companions and then back at me. No, don't stand next to me. I don't need people to think I'm dating you. You'll ruin my image. So there it was. Not a final kiss. Not a "I'll miss you," but genuine anxiety over being seen with me. For a brief moment, I almost laughed, because it was insane that this girl, who couldn't even afford her own rent, thought she was too good to be seen next to me, the guy literally funding her little dream. She wanted me to disappear, like a stagehand pulling ropes behind the curtain while she performed. I peered across her to Dorian and Lyra, who were both pretending not to eavesdrop but smirking anyhow. When I looked back at Selena with her full glam makeup and faux confidence, everything connected. Every time she spoke down to me, she always acted as if her life was more aspirational than mine. I did not argue. I honestly felt lighter than I have in months. I merely smiled, nodded and said, "Yeah, you're right. Wouldn't want to ruin your red carpet moment." Then I got go of the luggage trolley, wished her a good voyage, and walked away. There was no spectacular argument, no scenario for her to utilize later in a tearful Instagram story. It's just me stepping out. She remained there paralyzed, unsure what to do, perhaps expecting me to run after her or grovel. But all she got was my back as I walked out of the terminal. I could almost feel her ego glitching behind me. As soon as I arrived in the parking lot, I took out my phone. She was going to be gone for 3 weeks. There was more than enough time. She believed she was about to establish her brand in Europe. She had no idea I was about to rebuild her entire brand at home. Trust me, I had plans. The trip back from the airport was the most tranquil I'd experienced in months. Only me, solitude, and the realization that I was truly free. Initially, the petty part of me wanted to go full scorched earth. I imagined pulling into the driveway, taking a garbage bag, and dropping all of Selena's sequin outfits, ring lights, and pricey serums right onto the front grass. Let your neighbors see it. Allow her to stroll up to her own circus tent of goods when she returns from Paris. But I eventually calmed down. That would give her exactly what she wanted. Drama. She was capable of spinning a narrative. My evil ex threw all my stuff on the lawn. Can you believe how cruel men are? No, I wasn't going to make it that simple for her. If she wants to be an influencer, fine. I was about to produce, direct and edit her farewell. The first stop was not even home. I headed directly to the showroom and bought the automobile she enjoyed driving around in. For the record, I owned my own car for daily use, nothing showy, simply sturdy and mine. But Selena always wanted a sleek black SUV that made her feel like a celebrity whenever we drove up someplace. She insisted on taking it every time so she could take pictures leaning against it as if she owned it. She didn't. The automobile was in my name, paid for with my money, and I was done allowing her to ride shotgun on my dime. I strolled into the dealership, approached the sales manager I had previously worked with and said, "Hey, remember me? I want to sell the SUV back." He was shocked, likely because most individuals do not dump a barely used premium car on a random Tuesday afternoon. But then he noticed the expression on my face. Don't ask questions, just print the paperwork. They completed a rapid buyback appraisal. About an hour later, I walked out with a very substantial check in my pocket and no regrets. Step 1 is complete. Selena loved that car because it made her appear wealthy. She hadn't even realized it was gone. I felt good when I pulled into my driveway. But coming into the house was a very different punch of reality. The place seemed a shrine to Selena's ego. Clothes pouring out of closets, beauty and skincare investments covering every surface in the bathroom, and her spare bedroom fully taken over by influencer junk. Ring lights, tripods, crates of fast fashion rubbish she bought for content but never returned. It didn't even resemble my house anymore. It resembled the backstage of a low-budget fashion show. I stood in the hallway for a good minute, looking around and thought, yeah, this isn't happening anymore. So I took out my phone, Googled removal services and found one that promised to be fast, covert, and complete. Perfect. I called them up, said that I needed anything that wasn't mine gone, and offered to pay double if they could remove it by tomorrow. The guy on the phone probably assumed I was going through a difficult divorce. I didn't bother to correct him. While I was at it, I arranged a deep cleaning crew. If I was going to get her out of my house, I was going to do it right. No trace remains. I wanted to go into a location that felt fresh, not haunted by the ghost of someone who valued her Instagram following over real life. After finalizing the house plan, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. If getting her belongings out of the house was step 2, cutting her off digitally was step 3. We shared streaming accounts, supermarket delivery logins, and even Amazon Prime. She was sucked into everything. I changed passwords one by one, removed her as an authorized user, and secured everything: Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, and credit cards. It felt like removing malware from my life. Then I got to the best part: her influencer business. Selena had a website that she used to route everything through: brand deals, contact information, and a small gallery of edited photographs. And because I was the one who originally put it up for her, and tech was not her thing, I still had the login. I sat there staring at the dashboard for about a minute, tempted to destroy it altogether. With a single click, her small empire would be gone. But no, that would have been too easy, too kind. Instead, I updated the recovery email address and phone number to mine. There have been no major edits or deletions yet. I was just making sure that when the time came, I would have all of the strings. It was late when I finished, and Selena's belongings remained in the house. But rather than being overwhelmed, I felt peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't responding to her pandemonium. Instead, I was putting together a strategy, step by step. That night, I enjoyed the best sleep I'd had in ages. There are no ring lights blazing at me. No more continuous TikTok scrolling from the opposite side of the bed. It's just me. Silence and the realization that Selena's brand was about to undergo a totally different type of relaunch. The next morning I also scheduled a locksmith appointment. New deadbolts, new keys, a fresh start. If Selena tried her old key when she returned, she'd get a polite click of rejection. Tomorrow the garbage team would arrive. Tomorrow the house would begin to feel like my again. And tomorrow was only the beginning. I woke up before my alarm, which is unusual for me. Selena's phone usually served as the home alarm, blasting some TikTok remix while she taped a rise and grind narrative that she'd delete an hour later. However, nothing happened that morning. Just silence. Honestly, that was the best alarm clock I'd had in years. I got myself coffee and sat in the living room, taking in everything with new eyes. The coffee table was covered in lip gloss tubes, half-burned candles, and receipts from content lunches. The dining table was blanketed in unopened PR packages she pleaded for online. She never opened the Amazon boxes that were heaped in the corner of her living room. It was like living in the clearance aisle. By 8:45, the junk removal truck arrived. 2 males emerged, built as if they had been dragging furniture since kindergarten. They looked about, and then at me. "So, what exactly are we clearing?" one inquired. I grinned. "Everything that looks like it belongs to a wannabe celebrity. If it looks like it belongs to an adult man, it stays." They chuckled, probably thinking I was exaggerating. They would learn. I walked them through the house. Wiped the closet out. Bathroom. Everything that does not smell like soap or deodorant is gone. Are there any spare bedrooms? Don't even sort. Just scoop. Selena had transformed the area into her personal QVC studio. There were tripods, 2 ring lights, racks of clothing still with tags, and stacks of shoes she wore once for a shot but then forgot about. The lads did not waste time. I stood in the corridor, simply listening. The sounds of boxes thudding, hangers clattering, and drawers slamming shut were music. Every thump out the door represented another bit of her ego leaving my home. One of the guys stepped out with a large framed image of Selena's face. Not a joke. She had a 24 by 36 glam shot of herself hanging in her bedroom, as if she were in a hotel lobby. The man paused and raised his brow at me. "Storage," I replied. He shrugged and carried it away. "Yes, storage." I was not foolish. I had everything ready to go into a unit across town. The first month is prepaid, and the code has been established. I wasn't about to give her ammunition by trashing her belongings and allowing her to play victim. No, she may complain to her followers about how harsh I was. But at the end of the day, her entire fast fashion enterprise would be waiting for her in a locked cage that she had to pay for. By mid-morning, half of the home was empty. The closet resembled a closet once more, rather than a mall dressing room. My razor, toothbrush, and one bottle of body wash were all that remained on the bathroom countertop. Simple, functional, and normal, not covered with 97 steps of skincare bottles and sprays. Sunlight flooded into the extra room. For the first time in months, it wasn't drowning under a tangle of cheap polyester and ring lights. That's when my neighbor Grant came by with his dog. He slowed down when he spotted the rubbish workers unloading stacks of purses and clothing. "Moving out?" he inquired. I smirked. "Not me." He laughed, gave me a thumbs up, and continued going. Even he knew. The cleaning staff arrived after the junk removal workers had left with their vehicle stacked to the roof. 3 women rushed out, armed with vacuums, buckets, and rubber gloves. They had that look as if they'd seen it all, so my mess wouldn't bother them. I didn't need to explain much. They stepped inside, looked about at the vacant rooms, and nodded like doctors preparing for operation. Within minutes, they were cleaning the baseboards, vents, and even the tops of the ceiling fans. One of them inquired about an unusual discoloration on the bathroom countertop. "Bronzer," I said. "Don't ask." She only chuckled and scrubbed harder. While they worked, I sat at my laptop and continued the digital cleansing. I locked her out of Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon yesterday. Today I dug deeper. Uber, gone. DoorDash, gone. No more unexpected charges because she had a taste for inspo sushi. Then I reopened her influencer site. I stared at it for a moment, wanting to hit erase, but that would have been quick, clean. She did not deserve to be clean. I modified the recovery information to my and then closed it. That website would eventually become my favorite tool. By late afternoon the cleaners had finished up. The house smelled of lemon polish and fresh air, not hairspray and self-tanner. They even vacuumed beneath the couch cushions, where I discovered 3 missing eyelashes and a half granola bar. Selena was like a walking glitter bomb. Her belongings got everywhere. After they went, I wandered carefully through the home. Each room felt lighter. The walls no longer felt like they were closing in. Standing in the spare bedroom, all vacant and bright, I could already picture the setup. Dumbbells in the corner, a bench, and possibly a tool rack. Finally, a place for me to build things instead of her phony studio. That night, I curled up on the couch with a Coke, watching the game. There are no ring lights buzzing, no phone camera snapping. There is no staged date night content. It's just me, the television, and tranquility. And Selena. She was presumably in Rome, bending her head just perfectly for a pasta photo, thinking her guy back home was still waiting to pick her up in her luxurious SUV. Meanwhile, the SUV had been sold, her belongings had been boxed and stored, and her digital empire was under my hands. She desired space to develop her brand. Fine. I had just given her all the space she could possibly want. And the best part? She hadn't known her stage was gone. Tomorrow, I wasn't only going to live in my house. I was going to own it. And I meant it literally. The next few days seemed like I was watching my life reboot in real time. There is no more clutter. No more bogus influencer studios. There will be no more shrines to Selena's ego. Just myself, 4 walls, and limitless possibilities. First, I went furniture shopping. Selena often chose items that looked beautiful in images but felt like rubbish in person: skinny leg chairs that wobbled if you exhaled too hard, a couch that appeared elegant but felt like sitting on a park bench. She was more concerned with aesthetics than functionality. Now it was my house, my rules. I purchased a new couch, huge and cozy, the kind you could pass out on during a game. I took my oak coffee table out of storage, which I had constructed myself years ago. Selena disliked it since it didn't fit her vibe, but I thought it was solid, genuine, and mine. Then I upgraded the TV to a larger size and installed a decent sound system. If I was going to recapture my kingdom, I was going to do it well. The spare bedroom became the pinnacle of this renovation. There will be no more fast fashion racks or ring lights that flash like a UFO. I brought in dumbbells, a bench, a squat rack, and even a workbench for my design work. For the first time in years, the room did not feel like a waste of space. It felt like mine. And you know what? That energy carried over into the remainder of my life. With Selena gone, I had some free time again. Actual free time, not hold this ring light while I film time. I started gaming late at night without anyone complaining about how it wasn't aspirational. I began working on my woodcrafts again. Even the air in the home felt lighter, as if the walls were no longer steeped in her artificial scent. Then came the component I hadn't realized I missed the most. My pals. Selena always thought my pals uninteresting. Translation. They didn't give her free attention or adore her Instagram. She eventually got me to spend less time with them. But now I've called them up and organized a proper guys' night. The first Friday without Selena, my friends arrived with pizza, wings, and enough goodies to feed a small army. We watched the game on my brand new television, sat on the couch, and laughed like idiots. One of my buddies glanced around and said, "Dude, this doesn't even look like the same house. What the hell happened?" I smirked, leaned back and said, "I remodeled. I started with the trash." The crowd burst into laughing. It was perfect. My phone buzzed in the middle of the night. Selena. A picture appeared of her in front of the Eiffel Tower, doing a false pout she thought looked mysterious. No text, no "how are you?" Just her bragging about being in Paris while I was stranded at home. I chuckled, flipped my phone around for the boys to see, and they all groaned. "She's still at it?" one of them inquired. "Oh yeah," I replied. And that's when I got the brightest idea. I took a short selfie of myself and the guys in my completely remodeled living room. New couch, new TV in the backdrop, an oak coffee table in the center, and food everywhere. Everyone was smiling in the middle of their laughter. I captioned it, "House looks different without you." Then I pressed send. She responded instantly. First, where is my stuff? Then, "What the hell did you do to the house?" My phone buzzed incessantly for the next 10 minutes. Walls of angry texts. Calls one after the other. "This is not humorous, Damien. You can't simply do this while I'm gone. Answer me right now." I did not answer to a single one. I threw my phone on the coffee table, grabbed another slice of pizza, and laughed alongside the guys. If she desired drama, she might scream into the nothingness. The quiet was the response. She kept texting me, and I ignored them all. After that single selfie, silence became my weapon. Instead, I used my time to plan something for myself. I had always wanted to ride my motorcycle down Route 66, but Selena was against it. She once commented, "That is not aspirational." That's too bad. I scheduled it. 2 weeks on the road, just me, my bike, and the infinite highway. And I made certain that my trip began on the exact same day that her flight home arrived. The timing could not have been better. And then, once everything was in order, I sat down to write the email. Short, chilly, and professional. There's no fluff, no emotion. Subject: important information for your return. Selena, as per your request at the airport, I am no longer a part of your life. To that goal, the following arrangements were made. Your possessions have been packed and transferred to a secure storage facility. Address is 123 Storage Way, Unit 42. Access code is 4321. The first month is prepaid. The SUV you were driving had been sold. It was under my name. The locks to the house have been changed. You are no longer a resident. I hope this provides you with the independence you want. I'll be out of town. I shall be unavailable for further contact. Do not attempt. Best good luck with your future undertakings. Damien. I read it once, smiled, and clicked submit. That was it. Done. Clean. There is no begging, explaining, or arguing, only the facts, spelled out in bullet points. If she wanted me removed from her image, she achieved her request. She simply didn't think she'd lose everything else with it. I leaned back, closed my laptop, and began packing for the vacation. For the first time in years, I did not plan around her schedule or needs. I was planning for myself. And damn, it felt great. That feeling stayed with me for the 2 weeks leading up to her journey home. I was lighter and happier. Hell, I even found myself whistling while packing for my motorcycle trip. Meanwhile, Selena's texts came in like clockwork, half flexing, half panicking. On the day of her return, I was already on a plane heading west. My friend Calder, an incredible legend, had vowed to keep me updated on whatever craziness happened. Oh, he delivered. Selena apparently landed and wanted me to wait at the curb as her personal chauffeur. She stood outside with her 3 gigantic luggage, surveying the throng as if I'd suddenly materialize with balloons and a welcome home sign. When she learned I wasn't present, she called me. Then again. Then again. Calder stated on the 10th call that she was pacing and had a complete meltdown. She eventually flagged down a taxi. And not just any cab, one of those little ones where even getting a carry-on into the trunk was a challenge. The driver had to battle her bulky luggage as if it were a CrossFit competition. Selena, of course, stood there filming herself appearing unhappy and stranded because her breakdown had to be satisfying. By the time the cab arrived at my place, the meter had reached triple figures. She inserted her old key into the lock. Nothing. I tried again. Nothing. That's when the real show began. Calder informed me that she beat on the door, expecting me to emerge from the other side. When it remained closed, she sat on one of her bags on the porch, looking at the door, as if pure willpower would open it. Then came the calls, 48 in 2 hours. Voicemails ranged from outrage, "You can't do this to me," to sympathy, "We can fix this, Damien. Just let me in." She even contacted her influential buddies, Dorian and Lyra. Guess what? They were suddenly occupied. Too busy to drive across town and help her move. Loyalty, I suppose, is only as strong as its clout. Finally, she had to call the backup plan, her parents, who lived 2 hours away. Calder said when they arrived, it looked like a bad sitcom. Her father was red-faced, cursing at Selina for wasting his time. Her mother cried as if I had locked their daughter out of Buckingham Palace. And Selina, she sat cross-armed on her luggage, staring at the house as if it had betrayed her. This was just the porch scene. The real fun began later that night, when the smear campaign went live. Selina and her 2 best friends shared synchronized Instagram tales. Tearful eyes, unsteady voices, and captions revealing the darker side of relationships. Selina portrayed herself as a poor, abandoned victim. A man she believed loved her abandoned her, leaving her homeless and stranded. If I hadn't been riding a motorcycle under the desert sky at the time, it could have stung. But what's the truth? It was funny. I had previously vaccinated everyone who cared. Before I left, I sent a subtle message to our mutual friends. Selina and I had broken up. She made it apparent that we wanted different lives. Simply reserve your judgment. That was it. There is no drama or plot for her to spin. So when her crocodile tears appeared on Instagram, folks weren't buying it. The comments on her posts were doubtful at best. Some even began gossiping about the airport scenario, in which she warned me that I would embarrass her. Funny how quickly that came out. Calder contacted me the next morning, laughing so hard that he could hardly breathe. "Bro, your front yard looked like a yard sale no one wanted to attend. Her dad yelling, her mom crying, Selina screaming into her phone, neighbors came out just to watch. Dude, it was like free entertainment." I imagined it all while driving along Route 66. Selina sat on her baggage throne, the illusion dissolving in real time. Her buddies have been ghosting. Her parents are fatigued. Her brand is disintegrating online. For once, I did not feel like a supporting role in her performance. She was no longer the star. She was the only one left outside, trying to play for an audience that had ceased clapping. And me? I was already miles away, seeing the Red Rock Canyon shine in the sunset. Free, untouchable, and grinning like a man who had just seen the end credits of a horrible movie. What's the finest thing about silence? It makes them crazier than shouting ever could. Selina had already humiliated herself on the porch, pleaded for pity online, and exhausted her friends' tolerance. All I needed to do was sit back and wait. But I wasn't going to let her fizzle out. No, she deserved one last firecracker. Remember how I took control of her influencer website, through which she conducted all of her business? Yes, I had been sitting on that ace card, and it was time to play it. Late one night, I parked the bike at a campsite, got out my laptop, and logged in. Her portfolio was still full of faked photographs. She's leaning on my SUV. Her whirling in gowns that I paid for. She's sipping cocktails she didn't buy. It was essentially a highlight reel of my finances disguised as motivation. Before I wiped anything, I changed the password, switched the recovery email and phone to mine, and enabled 2-factor authentication. Even if she tried to claw her way back in, every code and reset was sent to me. Then I wiped everything, every filtered photograph, each phony caption. The total was marked in thick red, and underneath I typed, "Brand is undergoing strategic realignment. Please check back soon for updates." I pressed the publish button, closed the laptop, and leaned back with the largest grin of my life. Calder later informed me that the timing was ideal. One of her decreasing fans noticed it almost immediately and emailed her a screenshot. Selina had a mental breakdown, he claimed. She went from selfie with a glass of wine to shrieking banshee in 5 seconds flat. She tried to log in but was locked out. She tried to recover the password, but it was denied. When she called the hosting firm, nothing happened. By the time she realized she had no control, my phone was ringing with her calls. 27 in the first hour, alone. I did not respond to a single one. When she couldn't solve anything, Selina did what she usually did, play the victim. She jumped on her Instagram story, red-faced and sobbing, telling her followers that I had hacked her website and destroyed her career. She even used the word career, as if she were a CEO rather than a lady with a phone and a ring light. But here's the deal. Her career only exists because of me. She couldn't publish anything until I paid for the vacations, clothes and dinners. She was sobbing over losing a job that was practically built on my cash. When crying didn't work, she switched methods. Enter the legal threats. About a week later, my lawyer called me, virtually ecstatic. "You're going to love this one," he replied, hardly holding back his laughing. Selena had hired a sophisticated firm, or at least sent a letter with their logo on it, and demanded that I give her access to the house, return the car, and pay her support because I had damaged her livelihood. My lawyer lives for this stuff. The man enjoys destroying weak arguments, and Selena had just given him a gold-plated one. He sent a rejoinder that was essentially a verbal roundhouse kick cloaked in legalese. Attached were a copy of the deed to the house. My name is clear as day. A photocopy of the car title. Again, my name only. An itemized statement for every expense I had covered for her over the previous year, including rent, groceries, utilities, vacations, and even the ridiculous studio lights. Her part of the total much beyond anything she could ever say I owed her. Finally, the letter finished with this polite but merciless line. "If Miss Selena Arlo decides to take this matter in court, Mr. Damien will gladly countersue for restitution of these fees. We strongly recommend that she reconsider." Translation. Kindly sue us. We would love nothing more than to see you be shredded in front of a judge. My lawyer told me that he chuckled while signing it. He stated that he doesn't typically receive this kind of low-effort target practice from ex-influencers, so he was enjoying every moment. Surprisingly, the threats stopped very immediately. No more letters. No more talk about the automobile. There was not even a whimper of support. She folded like an inexpensive tripod. And with that, her arsenal was gone. No house. No car. There's no website. No career. Her buddies had left her alone. Her parents were fatigued. And now, not even the law could help her. The best thing was that she had based her entire identity on appearing like a star. But when the lights went out, there was nothing left. Just silence. That quiet accompanied me all the way home from my trip. For the first time in years, my phone was not ringing with requests, complaints, or bogus emergencies. No guilt trips, no assistant-level tasks, and no stage date night requests. Just peace. And that silence was better than any retort. Selena's internet presence had entirely vanished by the time I arrived home. There are no new posts. No dramatic quotations. No selfies. The only traces of her brand were screenshots of rubbish disposal receipts floating about, exchanged in group conversations for laughs. I'd dismantled her kingdom without yelling once. No fights. No begging. There are no theatrics. It's just logic, receipts, and quiet. That was the killing shot. And wow, it felt great to squeeze the trigger. After that motorcycle excursion, I felt like a different man. There is no tension, no constantly buzzing phone, and no planned photo shoots. Just myself, the road, and the kind of silence you don't realize you've been missing until you find it. When I returned to my garage and parked the bike, the silence continued. Selena was gone from every aspect of my existence. No calls, no messages, no nonsense. Her brand was not just quiet. It was dead. Word spread across mutual friends. Selena had moved back in with her folks. That's right, Miss I'm a Global Influencer was now living in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by plush animals and posters she'd forgotten to remove. It appears that the storage unit pickup was also a fiasco. Her parents had to rent a moving truck to transport everything back, and the entire day was spent screaming. Calder's neighbors said it was so awful they could hear her father yelling from the street. What about her influencer career? Finished. She didn't have enough money to keep up the look. No more flashy SUVs to pose in, no more content excursions that she couldn't afford, no more clothes purchases that she was covertly putting on my card. Her feed transitioned from daily posts to recycled old photographs, and then to hazy inspiring platitudes about fresh beginnings. Essentially, digital tumbleweeds. Even her friends Dorian and Lyra let her go. They must have grown tired of her screaming about how I had ruined her life while begging for rescue. Those two were not about to support her lifestyle. Loyalty in her environment lasted only as long as the free benefits did. Then came the funniest part. My guy who works downtown contacted me unexpectedly. "Hey man, you'll get a kick out of this. Selena came into the gallery yesterday, tried to sell me some of your old furniture that you got rid of when you were clearing the place. Said she was an interior designer now." I laughed so hard that I nearly dropped the phone. "Did you buy any? Are you kidding? It was all cheap junk with no character." I told her it was worthless. She flipped out, started ranting about how you destroyed her career. Honestly, man. It was sad. That was Selena in a nutshell, deluded. She believed she was a visionary. However, the illusion broke as soon as the money ran out. Without me, there was no brand. Only mounds of ugly furniture and expired skincare. Meanwhile, I wasn't simply surviving, I was prospering. My house was mine again. Each room included something real. My oak coffee table in the living room. My weights and tools are in the spare room. My photographs from the trip are framed on the wall. Memories that were meaningful without a filter. I reconnected with pals whom I had neglected for too long. Game nights. Hikes. Weekends at the park. Selena had always described it as uninteresting because it did not receive many likes on social media. It turns out that dull is actually quite enjoyable. The best part though? Freedom. I could arrange my own excursions, purchase what I wanted, and do anything I wanted, without worrying about whether it fit the vibe. I no longer had to live in another person's highlight reel. I never disliked Selena. Not even after everything. Hate would imply that she remained in my thoughts. What I felt was better. Indifference. She was merely noise I had silenced. She once informed me that my life was not aspirational. And she was right in her own way. My life was not ideal for Instagram. It was real, solid, and based on long-lasting materials. Friendships. Work. I made the furniture with my own hands. Things that don't require an audience to matter. Selena never realized I wasn't just a supporting character in her story. I was the basis. And when the foundation went away, the entire beautiful set collapsed. She desired a brand. I wanted a life. She was trapped with empty quotes and fuzzy old photographs. I have everything else. You're such an idiot, my brother laughed after he stole my identity to buy a $45,000 truck. Now he ended up with 2 years in federal prison. Hello Reddit. My brother took my money for a truck and using my identity, so I sued him. He believed that familial connections would save him. The federal penitentiary disagreed. It turns out I wasn't the only one he had defrauded. Before we begin, let me establish the scene. I am 29, male, and have been working as an electrician in Kansas City for the past 8 years. I began as an apprentice, earning $12.80 per hour, getting shocked on a daily basis, and being treated like trash by journeymen who believed hazing was a personality feature. Now I run my own crew, make 6 figures when the business is solid, and own my home completely in Brookside. Not bad for a guy who started with nothing but a high school certificate and a tenacity that stretched the length of Interstate 70. Everything was built from scratch. There are no family links, no silver spoons. The early days were terrible. I recall one job when I had to crawl into a century-old warehouse basement, fighting rats and asbestos insulation, to install new wire for some cheapskate who believed code compliance was a suggestion. I spent 14 hours in that hellhole, returned home looking like I had been dragged behind a vehicle, and earned $180 for the day. However, every money went into my never work for someone else again fund. My breakthrough came when I was awarded a contract to rewire the old Kemper Arena, which was being converted into junior sports facilities. 6 months of consistent work, a decent team, and enough profit to eventually purchase my own truck and some genuine equipment. That was when I realized I could make this work. My 26-year-old brother Dylan is a master at professional disappointment. I dropped out of community college after 1 semester and bounced between entry-level retail jobs and get-rich-quick scams that usually ended the same way, him contacting me at midnight asking for bail money. I paid for his first semester, $2,800, because he promised to study. When I discovered he had been spending his days at the student union playing video games, I drove to college and spoke with him. "You want to drop out? Fine, but you're paying me back the tuition money, bro. That's not how college works. Sometimes you have to pivot, and sometimes you just have to stop talking and finish what you started." He never repaid me. While I was crawling around 120-degree attics and getting my hands ripped up on metal conduit, Dylan was producing TikTok videos about the entrepreneurial attitude and lecturing to anyone who would listen why manual labor was for suckers with no vision. My cousin Caleb and I used to watch his movies when we needed a giggle after a particularly bad workday. Nothing like seeing your brother explain passive income while living in your parents' basement and stealing their groceries. Our folks are full enablers. Mom handled Dylan as if he were Steve Jobs trapped in a Best Buy employee's body. Dad insisted that Dylan only needed the proper opportunity. When Dylan was fired from GameStop for regularly showing up late, Mom drove him to work for 2 weeks until he found another job. When it turned out to be a pyramid business selling energy drinks, Dad went through a 40-minute presentation on residual income. "He's got enthusiasm," Dad would say. "That's worth something." "So does a golden retriever," I'll reply. "Doesn't mean you give it a credit card." I was the responsible person who could handle his difficulties. Dylan was the creative one who simply required more time to work things out. The double standard irritated me the most. When I first started my electrical business, I asked Dad for a small loan of $3,000 to purchase equipment and licensing expenses. The answer was, "Son, you need to learn to stand on your own feet. Building character means handling your own problems." However, when Dylan required money for his enterprises, family support became critical to success. For many years I played along. Family is family, right? I imagined he'd grow up, discover what real labor was like, and maybe even thank me for keeping him afloat. Wrong. I made the error of assuming Dylan only needed actual work experience about 3 months prior to the truck incident. Real work. I worked on a residential project in Leawood, rewiring a lawyer's 1960s built property. Mr. Whitaker, the homeowner, was one of those old-school guys who valued craftsmanship and made timely payments. Easy money, uncomplicated job, and my crew could finish it in 4 days. That's when I had the wonderful idea to bring Dylan along as a helper. Give him the opportunity to see what real work looks like. Maybe learn a trade and get some goddamn work ethic. "You want me to do what?" Dylan asked when I called him. "Work? I don't know anything about electrical work. That's why it's called learning. You carry tools, hand me stuff and try not to electrocute yourself. $15 an hour to start." $15 an hour seemed generous for someone whose only qualification was sharing my DNA. But I believed that if he could do basic labor for a week without making a mistake, there could be some possibility. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow 7 a.m. sharp. Wear work boots and clothes you don't mind getting dirty." 7 a.m.? Dude, that's early. Day 1. Dylan showed up around 8:30 a.m. "Sorry I'm late. My alarm didn't go off and then I had to stop for coffee because..." "Save it. Here's your safety gear." I gave him a hard hat, safety glasses, and work gloves. He looked at them as if I had handed him medieval torture instruments. "Do I really need all this? It's just a house. You really want to explain to Mom why you're in the ER? Because you were too cool for safety equipment?" For the first hour, everything went well. I had him organize tools and transport supplies upstairs. Basic nonsense that even Dylan couldn't botch up. Then I instructed him to get my wire strippers from the blue toolbox in the vehicle. 10 minutes later, he returned empty-handed. They sat directly on top. "Dylan, are you serious?" "Yeah, there's like a million tools in there. I don't know what wire strippers look like." I went to the truck myself. The wire strippers were resting right on top of the other equipment, just where I had left them. The breaking point occurred on day 3. I was working in Whitaker's daughter's bedroom. She returned home from college for the summer. Nice youngster, a pre-med student who works at Country Club Plaza to help pay for school. I left Dylan to organize tools in the corridor while I installed new outlets along the baseboards. When I returned 20 minutes later, he was gone. I caught him on the back patio, trying to gain the girl's number. "So, you're studying medicine. That's cool. I'm actually an entrepreneur myself. Ever heard of social media marketing?" The poor girl seemed trapped, delivering polite remarks while clearly wanting to flee. Her face lit up with relief as she saw me. "Okay, good. Brody's back. I was just telling your brother about my organic chemistry class." I grabbed Dylan's arm and drew him away. "What the hell are you doing?" "Just being friendly. You said customer service was important. Customer service means being polite and professional, not hitting on the client's daughter while you're supposed to be working." I was networking. That evening Mr. Whitaker approached me as we were closing up. "Brody, I don't want to tell you how to run your business, but your helper seems a bit unfocused." He spent 20 minutes explaining to my daughter why college was a waste of time. She's a Dean's List student working toward medical school. I wanted to disappear into the floor. The final calamity occurred the next morning. I gave him a simple task. Transfer the extension ladder from the front yard to the rear. He dragged the fully extended ladder around the house, catching a gutter, pulling down the electricity line, and knocking the meter half off the wall. I heard the boom from inside and dashed outside to find Dylan standing next to a 40-foot ladder entangled in power lines, the electricity meter dangling at an unsafe angle. "It just got stuck," he explained, as if this was an inescapable act of God. Before we could make any repairs, the power company had to come out and de-energize the lines. Mr. Whitaker was without electricity for 6 hours. The repair cost me $1,200 out of pocket, plus an awkward chat regarding liability insurance. Dylan stated, "I don't understand why you're so mad," as I drove him home that evening. Accidents happen. Accidents happen when you're being careful and something goes wrong. This happened because you were being lazy and stupid. That was it. Done. No more chances. No more family favors. No more attempting to help someone who refused to be helped. 3 months later, he contacted me with some new BS. He called during an emergency task. Some guy attempted to build his own breaker box and nearly burned down half of Midtown. My phone exploded as I was elbow deep in cleaning up his mess. Emergency. Need $10,800 today or I'm getting evicted. I left the job site to deal with Dylan's dilemma, spending 2 hours on the phone with his landlord, who patiently explained that Dylan was 2 months past on rent and had been too busy with projects to return his calls. The landlord, Steve, was actually rather nice about it. Look, your brother seems like a nice kid, but nice doesn't pay rent. I've got bills too. What's he been telling you about the money situation? Said he was waiting on a big contract to come through, some marketing deal that was going to pay him 15 grand. I was almost embarrassed. He'd purchased a $600 gaming chair the week before. When I confronted him, he said it was a business investment because Twitch stardom evidently needed lumbar support, so I told him I couldn't assist. The tantrum was fantastic, with me yelling about how I had forgotten where I came from and how prosperity had caused me to look down on my family. The tag team guilt assault began. Mom called, crying because Dylan would be homeless. Dad called, disappointed, and asked if this was the guy I had become. What if it was you who needed help, son? Dad, if it was me, I'd get a second job, or a first job, or any job. But I felt guilty about it. It always has. I caved. I sent the money. 3 weeks later, Dylan shared Instagram stories from a music festival discussing the importance of investing in experiences over material possessions. That's when it struck me. I wasn't assisting family. My folks cheered from the sidelines while I subsidized a mature man's Peter Pan complex. The enormous electricity contract I got from the city was meant to be my ticket to finally having some breathing room. Worked steadily for 2 years, had an 8-man crew, and had enough money to consider getting married and creating my own family, which made me an even more appealing target for family vultures. However, I had begun to decline minor requests, which upset them. Dylan had been abnormally silent in the week prior to the truck collision. There were no desperate phone calls, no unexpected situations, and no visits when he happened to be in the area around dinner time. Caleb sent me a message. Heads up. Saw Dylan at the Ford dealership yesterday pointing at trucks and talking on the phone. Looks sketchy as hell. Caleb is the only family member with his mind screwed on straight. Worked in construction, paid his own expenses, and called shit what it was. When family dinners evolved into Dylan pity parties, Caleb and I would usually wind up on the back porch talking about everyday things like sports and work, while the adults inside tried to figure out why Dylan couldn't find work. Think he's finally getting a job that requires a truck, I texted back. Yeah, and I'm thinking about becoming a ballet dancer. Dude was wearing a button-down shirt that still had creases from the package. Caleb messaged me. Heads up. Saw Dylan at the Ford dealership yesterday pointing at trucks and talking on the phone. Looked sketchy as hell. We were both mistaken. I should have listened, but I was preoccupied with a business project downtown. I'm sitting in my truck after a 12-hour shift, coated in dust and feeling like I've been hit by a freight train. Some clever contractor had wired an entire office building like he was playing electrical Jenga, and my staff spent the day correcting his amateurish work. The owner of the building was also a nasty jerk. I kept wondering why we couldn't just make it function rather than getting everything up to code. It appears that fire safety was optional in his environment. I only wanted a drink and 8 hours of sleep. That's when Dylan emailed me a photograph. Consider this. A brand new Ford F-150 candy apple red parked in our parents' driveway like it owned the area. Chrome running boards, tinted windows, the works. This was not a work truck. This $45,000 statement piece proclaimed, I'm compensating for something. Dylan is standing next to it with the biggest shit-eating grin I've ever seen. Keys dangled from his finger like if he had won the lotto. Caption. Thanks for the truck, bro. You're such an idiot. My blood pressure was so high that I believed I was having a stroke. See, we hadn't spoken in over 2 weeks. Things have become heated since I refused to send money. So I opened my banking application. $8,200, Ford Motors credit. The down payment was processed. The charge came from a credit card I rarely used. One of those emergency-only cards I received years ago and forgot about. But Dylan had the number. He had somehow convinced Ford Credit that he was me. I just sat there staring at the screen, the engine still running, as every curse word raced through my mind. The kid who had spent months explaining why he couldn't keep his job at GameStop had just cheated me of a luxury truck he had no right owning. But here's something he didn't know. I was finished. I didn't call him, text him, or give him the opportunity to fabricate a narrative about misunderstandings or emergencies. The first call is to Ford Credit. I need to report fraudulent use of my credit for a vehicle purchase. Oh my. Let me pull up the account. Yes, I see the transaction. Are you saying this wasn't authorized? Unless I've developed multiple personality disorder, no, I didn't buy a truck. I'll flag this immediately. The vehicle will need to be repossessed within 24 hours. Perfect. Don't call the person who picked it up. Just show up and take it. Michelle, a Ford Credit representative, was very helpful after realizing this was legitimate fraud. It turned out that they'd been seeing more identity theft cases recently, and she walked me through the full procedure. We'll need you to file a police report and send us the case number. The faster you do that, the faster we can get this resolved. Already on it. The second call is from Caleb. Are you busy tomorrow morning? Why? Want to watch Dylan's truck get repoed? Jesus Christ, what did he do? Stole $8,000 from me to buy it. A long pause. I'll bring coffee. Caleb later informed me that his initial impression was that Dylan had finally crossed a threshold that our parents couldn't overlook. He was also mistaken about that, but at least one member of the family possessed a working moral compass. Third, I called the Kansas City Police Department's criminal fraud hotline and reported identity theft, credit fraud, and forgeries. Case number, documents, and the works. Officer Hayes, the cop who took my report, had previously witnessed this type of familial scam. 9 times out of 10, it's relatives, he told me. They think blood relation gives them access to your credit. What happens now? We investigate. If the evidence supports your claim, and it sounds like it will, we'll file charges. Fair warning though, family cases get ugly fast. He was not kidding. By 6 p.m., my phone had a seizure. Call after call. Text after text. Dude, what's happening? Ford says they're taking the truck back. This has to be some kind of mistake. Can you please call them and fix this? I responded with a message. Talk to my lawyer. That was bullshit. I didn't have a lawyer yet. But Caleb's brother-in-law was a prosecutor, and he'd given me the name of Rachel Smith, a lady who specialized in financial crimes and reportedly ate fraud cases for breakfast. I phoned her office. I laid her the entire story. The truck. The photo, and Dylan's history of treating me like his personal bank. When I came to the section about his using my credit card without permission, she made this noise. Not quite a laugh, but certainly satisfaction. How old is your brother? 26. Good. Adults get adult consequences. Can you be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Absolutely. That night I received a call from Dad. Brody, we need to talk. This whole thing with the truck is getting out of hand. You're right. Your son committed multiple felonies. That's definitely out of hand. It's not that serious. He made a mistake. Dad, he stole my identity to buy a truck, not borrowed money. Stole my identity. He's family, Brody. Family doesn't sue family. Family doesn't commit felonies against family either. But here we are. I hung up. My phone rang again quickly. I turned it off. The next morning, Caleb arrived at 7 a.m. With coffee and donuts, we are ready for the show. We parked across the street from my folks' home and waited. At 8:47 a.m., a tow truck arrived with 2 men who obviously did this for a livelihood. The repo team was incredibly efficient. They simply linked it up and rolled out as if it were routine. Dylan dashed out of the house in pajama pants, waving his hands like he was directing air traffic. Even from across the street we could hear him saying, "There's been a mistake. That's my truck." The repo man didn't even slow down, just hooked it up and sped off. Dylan stood in the driveway for 10 minutes, staring at the oil smear where his truck had been. That, Caleb replied, taking a sip of coffee, is the most beautiful thing I've seen all week. Then I visited Rachel's office. Your brother's in deep shit, she continued, without bothering with minor details. Identity theft, credit fraud, forgery if he signed your name anywhere. We're looking at potential felony charges. What are my options? Civil suit for $8,200 plus damages for time and emotional distress, or we go full nuclear and push for criminal charges. Both. If you're feeling ambitious, let's go nuclear. Filing took less than 2 hours. By lunchtime Dylan had received documents and a court date. My phone has exploded again. This time, it was Mom. Have you lost your mind? A lawsuit? How could you do this to your brother? He's devastated. Good, maybe next time he'll think twice before committing felonies. You're destroying this family. No, Mom. Dylan destroyed this family when he decided to steal from me. I'm just making it official." She hung up. For a week everything was quiet. There are no more charges on my cards. No more panic calls. I began to wonder if the legal realities had made him see logic. Then he arrived at my job place. I was up on a ladder running wiring through a ceiling when one of my guys said, "Hey Brody, someone is here to see you." I came down to find Dylan standing next to my truck, holding his phone as if it carried the world's most important message. He seems relaxed. Humble even. "I wanted to apologize," he explained. "I know I screwed up. I know you're pissed. I've been thinking about ways to make this right." This threw me off. This wasn't the Dylan I knew. The one who approached every confrontation as if he were a victim of circumstances beyond his control. "I can't afford a lawyer," he explained. "I was hoping we could work something out. I'll get a job, set up payments, whatever you need." And this is where I became stupid. A part of me wanted to believe him. Perhaps it was wishful thinking. Maybe I just wanted to believe that losing his toy truck had finally shocked him awake. "Can we talk? Just 10 minutes. I don't want this to go to court." So I told my staff to have lunch and walked with him to a neighboring diner. For 30 minutes, he was the brother I wished he could be. He apologized without making excuses. He recognized that what he'd done was wrong. He even showed me his phone, which contained 3 job applications submitted that morning. "I know I've been a shitty brother," stated the younger gentleman. "I know I've taken advantage. I want to change that." After he departed, I sat in the diner booth, thinking about dropping the accusations. Perhaps this was really unusual. Perhaps losing his dream truck accomplished what years of lectures could not. Then my phone vibrated. "Reject the transaction. $3,200 at Argosy Casino Riverside." My heart sank into my work boots. The charge was from the same credit card he'd used for the truck, which I'd forgotten to deactivate because I assumed the fraud alert would cover it. While I was still staring at the refuse notification, another text message arrived from him. "Guess your credit's screwed now too. Maybe next time, don't be such a dick to family." I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to Rachel. Then I phoned the police. The Kansas City Police Department did not mess around. They arrested Dylan the next morning on charges of identity theft, attempted fraud, and violating a restraining order. It appears that simply showing up at my employment site was sufficient. 5 days in county jail. Not long enough to write a memoir, but enough time to reflect on his decisions. Rachel also got me a protective order. Dylan was legally prohibited from contacting me, visiting my house, showing up at job sites, or generally living in the same zip code as me. That's when my folks revealed their true colors. The voicemails began instantly. "You've gone too far. He's your brother. This is not how we raised you. Do you want him to have a criminal record? How will that help anyone?" You'll notice they didn't ask how I was. They didn't check to see if I was okay after being robbed and threatened by my own brother. Nope. It was all about poor Dylan and how nasty I had been. Caleb contacted me after speaking with our Aunt Sarah. "Your parents are telling everyone you overreacted and that Dylan was just borrowing the money. Borrowing without asking is called stealing." "Yeah, well, they're not seeing it that way. They're painting you as the villain who destroyed the family over money." 2 weeks later, I was back in court. Rachel presented everything as if she were giving a tutorial on how to destroy someone who thought they were untouchable. The truck purchase, the casino attempt, the texts, and his complete lack of guilt. Dylan arrived this time with a public defender who appeared disinterested in being there. The judge was having none of it. $8,200 in restitution plus $5,000 for emotional distress and court costs. $13,200 total, plus probation and mandatory financial counseling. "Your Honor," Dylan lawyer explained, "my client is unemployed and has no assets." "Then he'd better find some," the judge said. "Garnishment order approved. Any future income, tax returns or assets will be seized until this judgment is satisfied." Dylan's face turned white. Rachel tilted her head and said, "That judgment follows him forever. Credit destroyed, background checks flagged. Can't get decent employment. The consequences will outlast your anger by decades." That was all right with me. I wasn't doing it for money anymore. I was in it for the concept. But we weren't finished. Not even close. Dad texted me. "Dylan is in serious trouble. We need to talk." I disregarded it. He called an hour later. I let it ring. The voicemail began with the normal guilt trip, but then he said something that compelled me to listen. "He owes some very dangerous people money, Charles. I'm not exaggerating." I called Caleb to see if he'd heard anything. He had. Your brother's been gambling hard. Online poker, sports betting, even driving to the casinos in Riverside and North Kansas City. Apparently he owes some loan shark in Independence about 15 grand. That's when the true story came out. Dylan hadn't only been financially reckless. He had been living in a whole dream world. The vehicle was supposed to be part of an image-building campaign. He believed that if he appeared successful, he could recruit investors for his social media empire. Instead of investors, he drew predatory lenders, casino hosts from Argosy and Ameristar, and guys who crushed kneecaps for money. My folks knew, they had known for months. While they were lecturing me on family devotion, they were covering his gambling bills and attempting to repair him behind the scenes. The cherry on top, they'd taken out a second mortgage to repay the loan shark. $25,000 was put against the house, which they had owned free and clear for 15 years. They want you to drop the lawsuit, Caleb explained. They think if Dylan doesn't have a criminal record, he can get a better job and pay everyone back. I laughed. They mortgaged their house for a gambling addict, and they want me to make it easier for him. Screw that, and screw them. But Caleb wasn't finished. There's more. Remember Dylan's ex-roommate Brandon? The one who moved out like 6 months ago. Yeah, what about him? I ran into him at Home Depot yesterday. He's still pissed about Dylan owing him money. Apparently it wasn't just the security deposit Dylan never returned. According to Brandon, Dylan borrowed $1,200 for emergency car repairs that never happened. Instead, Dylan used it for some cryptocurrency investment that went belly up in 3 days. When Brandon demanded his money back, Dylan fed him a story about waiting for an insurance settlement that was completely fictitious. That same week, Caleb heard from Mrs. Harris, our elderly neighbor who had always been kind to Dylan. It turns out he borrowed $800 from her for job training courses that would help him find a better job. The courses were real. They only cost $50, not $800. Dylan pocketed the difference. She is humiliated. Caleb stated that she does not want to cause difficulty, but she is on a fixed income, and the money was very important to her. The big reveal came from Caleb's girlfriend, who worked at the bank where my parents banked. She was unable to provide specifics due to privacy rules. But she mentioned that my folks had been there a lot recently. Loan applications, second mortgage papers, and many cash withdrawals. He said my father appeared to have aged 10 years. That's when everything clicked. My parents were desperate for me to help Dylan. So insistent that families stick together. He's so willing to excuse his behavior. They had been funding his disaster for months and were running out of funds. The next family gathering was for my cousin Sophie's wedding shower. I didn't want to go, but Caleb persuaded me. You'll regret missing it, and maybe we'll learn more about what's going on. My parents were present, looking uncomfortable and muttering to relatives in the corners. I overheard Mom talking to my aunt about difficult times, and Dad saying something about temporary financial setbacks. During the gift opening, I noticed my parents handed Sophie a $25 Target gift card. These were the people who used to offer $200 cash gifts at weddings. The same people who had recently obtained a second mortgage to cover their son's gambling bills. After the shower, Caleb and I were carrying presents into our cars when Brandon arrived. He was apparently dating one of Sophie's friends and had received an invitation. Brody. Hey man, I heard about the truck thing. That's so fucked up. Yeah. Well, Dylan is going to be Dylan. Did you know he's been telling people you stole his truck? Like, he's actually trying to play the victim in this whole thing. That surprised me. What's he saying? That you got jealous of his success and used your connections to have his truck repossessed. Says you're trying to sabotage his business because you can't stand seeing him do well. Brandon also revealed that Dylan had sought to borrow more money from him just 2 weeks ago. Additional $500 for business equipment. When Brandon reminded him of the $1,200 he's still owing, Dylan like it was ancient history. The balls of this guy. Absolutely fantastic. 2 days after the wedding shower, Mom called me. Not your typical guilt trip call, but something unusual. She sounded exhausted. Defeated. Charles, I need to tell you something about Dylan. About all of it. I'm listening. A long pause. Can you come over? I don't want to do this on the phone. I nearly said no. Part of me thought this was simply another manipulative ploy, another attempt to convince me to withdraw the charges. But something about her voice stopped me. I drove to their place that evening. Dad was noticeably absent. Working late, Mom said. But I felt Dad couldn't face the topic. We sat at the kitchen table, where I had done homework as a child. Mom had made coffee, But neither of us tried it. I don't know where to start, she said. How about with the truth? She drew a hesitant breath. Dylan has been using our credit cards for months. We didn't know at first. The bills would come and there would be charges we didn't recognize. But Dylan always had explanations. What kind of explanations? He said he was buying equipment for his business or that he'd used our card because his was maxed out, but he was going to pay us back when his contracts came through. Contracts that never existed. The business that never existed. How much, Mom? $28,000. I felt my stomach drop. $28,000. No wonder they were so desperate for me to assist him. I'm so worried about him having a criminal record. We kept thinking the next payment would cover everything, she told me. He kept showing us these apps on his phone, these websites about cryptocurrency and online marketing. He made it sound so legitimate. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Your father wanted to believe him. We kept thinking this was finally it, his big break. The worst part, Dylan was forging their signatures on credit card applications. 3 separate cards, each maxed out within months. When their payments grew unmanageable, he persuaded them to take out a second mortgage. He stated that the business was going to take off. That we'd be able to repay everything within 6 months. He had these charts, the projections. The mortgage payment is $380 per month. Mom answered gently. We'll be paying it until your father is 75. I sat there, contemplating this knowledge. My parents, who had paid off their house early, never had credit card debt, and had saved wisely their entire lives, had been financially devastated by their own son. Why didn't you tell me? We were embarrassed and scared. Dylan kept saying he was about to turn everything around. Mom, he's never turned anything around, ever, in his entire life. I know that now. We sat silently for a few minutes. Finally I asked the question that I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. What happens now? I don't know. Your father thinks we should sell the house, downsize to an apartment, use whatever equity is left to pay off the credit cards. And Dylan doesn't get to come back, ever. I told him yesterday. It astonished me. Despite their enabling, my parents had now reached their limit. She began to cry then, out of true anguish for the son she had lost and the life they had made that was now gone. I keep thinking about what we did wrong, where we went wrong. Maybe if we'd been stricter when he was younger. Dylan is 26, he made adult choices. This isn't your fault. I intended it. My parents were victims as well as enablers. They had been duped and lied to by someone they absolutely trusted. Before I departed that night, Mom asked me one more thing. Do you think he'll ever get better? Do you think he'll ever change? I thought about it for a bit. Not until he faces real consequences. The federal case was solid. There's too much evidence. There are too many victims. There were too many lies that were easily disproven. When the prosecutor detailed Dylan's schemes, the truck fraud, the casino attempts, the credit card theft from our parents, and the money he stole from Brandon and Mrs. Harris, it formed a picture of someone who had been scamming everyone in his life for more than a year. Dylan attempted to plea bargain. The feds offered 18 months if he made full compensation to everyone. The problem was that he owed around $42,000 total to all victims and had a negative net worth. My parents had already depleted their savings trying to cover his gambling bills. They had taken out a second mortgage for $25,000, but still couldn't pay off everything he owed. The trial lasted 3 days. On day 2, I testified about everything, from the truck purchase to the casino efforts. Dylan received 2 years in federal jail, 3 years probation, and full restitution for everyone he defrauded. My parents lost their home 6 months later, having to sell it to pay off the second mortgage and cover what they could of Dylan debt. They are currently renting a 2-bedroom flat in Raytown. But here's the thing with consequences. They don't end when the gavel falls. When Dylan was released after 18 months in prison, he discovered what life is like for a federal felon. Background checks are performed on all employment applications. Credit reports indicated multiple fraud convictions. Landlords who refused to rent to someone with his background. Caleb kept me informed via the family grapevine. Dylan was couch surfing, picking up cash-only day labor wherever he could find it, and being turned down for every serious job when they checked his past. The internet made matters worse. Every potential employer who investigated his name discovered the same information. Federal convictions for identity theft and fraud. He was unable to get a genuine job within 6 months after being released from prison. He couldn't rent an apartment without someone conducting a background check and rejecting his application. Even when he tried to use false references, a Google search of his name revealed the entire tale. He attempted migrating to many cities. It did not matter. Your criminal record follows you around, and his was very damaging. Last I heard, he was staying in a weekly hotel in Independence, surviving on odd jobs and food assistance. My parents contacted Caleb one last time. They wanted to know whether I'd consider helping Dylan get back on his feet now that he'd paid his debt to society. Caleb gave my response. That debt follows him forever. If they don't like it, they can move to Independence and help him personally. A year later, I received a wedding invitation through the mail. Not from family, but from Rachel, my lawyer. She was getting married to a prosecutor she met while working on Dylan's case. She pulled me away during the reception. You know, your brother's case made my reputation. I've gotten dozens of financial fraud clients since then. Happy to help. There's something else. Your brother was arrested again last month. Check fraud in Arkansas. It appears that certain things never change. I was not surprised. People like Dylan do not learn. They simply find new victims in different locations. But this time, it wasn't my problem. I drank my drink and drove home to my paid-off house in my paid-off truck, feeling good about my strong money account and clear conscience. Some bridges are designed to be burned, salted and nuked from orbit. Just to be sure. Dylan learned his lesson the hard way.